Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek through Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We're on Volume 21, Extra Chapter 2 and 3. I don't even want to do 3. Just we're gonna act like 3 doesn't exist. We're just gonna move right on to Volume 22. But yes, we're done. That's Volume 21. That's another one down, and we can move on to 22. But before that, yes, let's do these last two chapters. As much as I don't want to do the last one. But as per usual, greatly appreciate you guys for dropping by for the premiere. Hey chat, hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday. After Mushoku Monday, hopefully you hit that like button. It's the greatest way, and it's free to support the channel. Greatly appreciate you guys' support, your kind words, all that stuff. It means so much to me. And yes, last week we had an amazing amount of support, and I greatly appreciate it. We had Nicholas with 100 gifted memberships. Just raining the emotes, just raining the emotes on everybody. And I'm having so much fun watching these people that have been around for a long time, just dodging the gifteds, just dodging them. It's great stuff. If you can dodge that many gifted memberships, you got some skill there. Just take pride in that. But yes, greatly appreciate the super as well. Thank you so much, Nicholas. It means so much to me. Thank you for giving all those memberships out, providing people with those amazing emotes. Nogar came in with a super as well. Noah with a massive, massive super. Thank you so much, Noah. It means so much to me. And yes, Inferno Torch with the continued support. Thank you, Inferno Torch. It means so much to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you guys so much. I could not say enough. It means so much to me. Your guys' support, your kind words, the supers, the Patreon supporters, the memberships, all that stuff helps keep this going, helps the channel grow, and I appreciate it so much. But with that said, let's just jump into it. Before we jump into this, though, everybody's yelling at me to go back and read Volume 15 at the very end. Just like, immediately, everybody's like, oh my gosh, now you gotta go read this. And then even last week, everybody's like, you gotta go read this. I don't know. I didn't want to do it because typically whenever people tell me to do that, it means that it's going to have something in there that's implied. And yes, I thought of this whole scene the moment that I read it. I recall that scene vividly when that moment came up in Zenith's memories. The moment that Zenith was thinking about how Edis came to her and said all that stuff, I'm like, that actually sounds very familiar there. I did remember the fact that, yes, Edis did say that she heard something. She thought she heard something. But I don't know. Against my better judgment, I'm going to go back and read that segment for you guys on here. And yes, there's probably going to be a spoiler in here because the only reason that people would want me to read it is because there's probably a spoiler in there. So if I get spoiled on something, it's your guys' fault. So to remind people, this is the point in which Edis has, yes, helped Rudius with Orsted, come back to the house. She fought for a while to try to figure out where she would fit in the family, and eventually comes to the point where she's going to protect Rudius. That's her place. Edis's aimless movements through the house had brought her to a quiet little room, and there she found seated a woman who was gazing out the window with an absent-minded expression. It was Zenith Greyrat. Edis had heard about her situation by now. She knew that long captivity deep inside of a labyrinth had left her mind shattered. But to Edis's surprise, Zenith turned towards her, as if sensing her gaze. The woman's eyes were clearly focused on her. Edis straightened up her spine reflexively. Regardless of her condition, this was Rudius' mother. She had to put her best foot forward here. With slow, cautious steps, she walked up to Zenith. Edis definitely needed to say something, but she wasn't sure what it should be. She hesitated for a long moment, longing to fold her arms, but refused to allow herself to do so. Ugh, now I wish I paid more attention to those stupid etiquette lessons. For a moment, she flirted with the idea of leaving the room and coming back once she had worked out what to say. But Zenith was staring up at her, patiently, as if waiting for her to speak. Yeah, and this is really, from this point, looking back, it really does feel like this is probably a point where Zenith is thinking, she's thinking that she's saying something to Edis. Like, oh, hey, Edis, welcome into the room. Are you doing okay? She's probably asking about her. Bucking under the pressure, Edis finally squeaked out the first thing that came to mind. I'm still quite inexperienced, but I'll do my very best. Beth? My very best? Edis frowned irritably at her own mistake, but then she noticed Zenith's expression change as well. She was smiling. Edis had always hated whenever people smirked at her mistakes, but this didn't look like a smile of amusement. If anything, it felt more like an answer. Zenith hadn't said a word, but for some reason, Edis thought that she could hear her voice. Try saying that to Rudy instead. There's no point in being all formal around me. Which is exactly what Zenith, in her mind and her memories, said. She said that she burst out laughing and then told her to say that to Rudius instead, or try to say it to Rudius instead. And also the idea of not being formal around me. Both of those things, Edis in her memories said that. So this is where I don't like what people say here. Now, there's one side of me that's like, okay, because everybody's telling me to read this chapter, that means that there's something here. Because there's plenty of scenes that Zenith was recalling back there that was in the story, but just giving us a deeper context, like going out in the garden with Aisha and Lilia showing up. But this is the only one that people want me to go to, which tells me that this is where possibly Edis actually received what Zenith was saying. This is why it's spoilers. Without a word, Edis lowered her head to Zenith, and as she did so, she renewed her promise to herself that she's going to marry Rudius no matter what. What I can say this could imply that's not really technically spoilery is that it's more of a confirmation that Edis right here read what Zenith was saying. That yes, if Edis isn't actually receiving what Zenith is sending, like she's got some kind of ability to send something and it's not just her reading minds, this is just really a sign of who Edis is. What is Edis? She is a swordswoman. She is incredibly skilled. And what do? They read their opponent. She knows how to read somebody. And so yes, when Zenith is looking at her, and in her mind she's saying, try saying that to Rudy instead, and she's laughing to herself, and she's saying, don't be so formal with me. Edis can read that in her expression. So it could be more of an idea of not so much that Edis is receiving something being sent by Zenith's mind, or she possibly could have said something. It's just Edis is like, well, she doesn't say anything, so maybe I'm just imagining this. But it's more so that Edis looks at her and knows how to read that she's actually saying that as Zenith is trying to say it. If it's a spoiler, you all suck. But anyways, that's that. I've read it. You guys can stop. I'm done crying about this whole situation. I want to move on to happier things. So with that said, let's jump into extra chapter. Therese looks for a husband. I actually found this a really cool chapter because it's not just, yes, Therese trying to find a husband, there being a dumb little thing about, miscommunications and her issues with Claire being kind of resolved in a silly way. But it's also looking deep into the Keepers, how the Keepers were formed and what their job was. And yes, what happened when technically the assassination attempt happened, how they changed things and how they run things now, which is really, really interesting. And yes, Dustbin. Yes, Dustbin losing. Let's just say it. Dustbin lost. He lost. He failed miserably. He loses, dude. I don't know. Maybe in the future, Dustbin can marry the blessed child, so it's not too much of a loss. Therese paid a visit to the Latria estate. She visited her parents more frequently since the incident with Rudius. When she was young, she rebelled against her mother, much like Zenith had. She thought that she would never set foot in the house again. But time passed. She started her job. And as she grew up, she also accepted that her mother would never change. I think there's like an acceptance there at some point. Like you do want to connect to somebody, like a family member. Say you have a family member that just, there's a quirk about them that you really don't like. But then there's at some point where you realize as you grow up that like, I can get around this. It's not really that big of a deal. I hated it back here, but as long as you kind of ignore this, you could still make a connection somehow. Back then, almost all of her meetings with Claire would end in a shouting match. But the incident with Rudius changed things. Claire's nagging decreased, and so Therese had started finding more reasons to stop by. Chief among them was being able to have meals without having to cook or clean up. Therese visited once every few days. So Therese is one of those types of girls. As long as I can get a meal, I don't have to cook it, I'm good. A girl that likes food. Therese was a knight, but she had status as a noble's daughter. She should have the means to employ a servant or two. After being kicked out and effectively disowned by her family, however, she had no choice but depend on a knight's meager pay. Once she joined the Blessed Child's guard and became a captain, her pay increased to the level that she could comfortably support a family. The problem was that in Millis, it was customary for the woman to provide the betrothed gifts when she got married. Given her estrangement from the family, Therese could well have given up on marriage entirely, but she did not. Instead, she scrimped and saved, dreaming of meeting her handsome prince someday. Reconciling with her family had rendered all of her hard-earned savings meaningless, but she held on to them anyways. So that's interesting right there. The idea that, yes, if she was with the family, that yes, when it came to the point where she would go marry somebody, they would provide it. The family and their riches, they would provide it, but she was on her own. She completely got disowned. And I didn't actually think that was the case. I didn't really realize that when they were talking about the idea that she had a falling out with her mother, that she completely got disowned. Even though whenever they went to all these different parties and stuff, she was praising her. In my mind, what happened was that, yes, she did, break off from the family and become a knight, but I didn't think that she was kicked out of the family because she was still known as Elatria. But even still, at some point, she was recognized for her skill. Everybody was praising Therese. And so at that point, I figured, if anything, she was reconnected with the family at that point. But no, this is implying that up until this point, she was completely disconnected from the family, wasn't getting any money from them. And yes, if she were to get married, she would have to do it on her own. And yes, she got a lot of savings in order to do that. Now then, Therese, when are you going to get married? She's going to ask it every time. She got to make sure her girl's good. Therese would immediately, if there was an option. For 20 years now, she dreamed of her handsome prince. Now she was probably too old to ever meet him. It was foolish to even hope for a partner. It's never too late.
You're not so young anymore. I won't say any more to you about a woman wasting her time in a job. But don't you think it's about time you settle down?
Is that really your opinion, Mother?
Who else's opinion would I be expressing? You are your own person. I understand that. But I worry about you as a mother.
No, it's just, Mother, how am I to get married unless you find me a partner? As a general rule, marriages amongst the Mills aristocracy were arranged by the parents of the betrothed. It was the parents' duty to find their child a partner. It wasn't that children couldn't choose their own partners, but such cases were few and far between. A few factors prevented Therese from getting married. One was that she was hardly an ideal bride. I'll take her. I'll take her. I always hate these kind of characters in these stories. They're like super beautiful and they're like, you know, self-sufficient. And they're really strong and all these kind of things. And like, you can't really find any faults in them. But yet in the story, they're just hopeless. They're just hopeless. And it really does kind of tell it here in the fact that she was just waiting for mom to do it. She was just waiting for her mom to do it. One was that she was hardly an ideal bride. Another was that she had no family to introduce her to potential matches. And there was also the fact that no one wanted to risk inviting Latria's enmity by marrying their disowned daughter. And there's the big thing right there. Yeah, now that Therese and Claire had reconciled, one problem was resolved.
Whatever do you mean? Didn't you yourself say you didn't want that?
Did I say that?
I have a rather vivid memory of you yelling, "Did dying in a power struggle make my sister happy?"
Right, I did say that, didn't I? Therese had completely forgotten.
You are your own person, and I thought that you would find someone yourself. Why do you think I never brought it up until now?
Makes sense. See, I thought this was something that we're regularly bringing up, because she mentioned the fact that whenever she meets with Claire, it always turns into that. So I guess it's one of those cases where somebody just doesn't really read the conversation as the same as the other person. They had both apologized for back then. Well, Therese had, and Claire accepted Therese's life choices, which was her version of an apology.
I'll accept it.
Thanks for apologizing. They sat in silence. Therese never considered her words coming back to bite her. I would like to take back what I said back then.
Then I shall begin searching for a husband befitting a daughter of the Latrias.
That's such a strong statement there. Such a strong statement there. It's like one end is literally like, okay, I'll handle it. Like, I will do it. I am going to handle this. I want to make sure that all my kids are married and happy before I pass. That is my duty as the mother of this family. I will make sure that all of my children find happiness, are married, have children, their children are actually taken care of, they're trained. That's my goal. And I've just been waiting here. I've been waiting for you to say something. But additionally, like that pride in her as a Latria, a daughter of a Latria. Thank you, Mother.
Oh, for goodness sakes. You've always been like this, making decisions without consulting anyone else, then assuming everyone understands when you change your mind. As a Millis lady, Therese.
Claire's lecture went on as Therese lowered her head dutifully. But inside, she was fist pumping. Yes, Mom's gonna handle it. Yes, yes. I don't have to do anything. I'm gonna get married. This wasn't exactly how she planned to get a groom, but it was going to work out. After being told that due to her age, she'd have to prepare to settle, Therese was rather impressed by the proposal that came a few days later. His name was Dusk Light Morshite, the Morshite family's fifth son. He was 26, a temple knight, albeit one with no important duties. He served as more of a reserve. That's kind of interesting to see this now, looking back after reading the later part, at the idea that he's classified as a reserve, that he's just a random knight, that nobody knows what he does. He just wanders the streets. Yeah, that's what he does. Not anything important. He usually had nothing to do because of this, and spent his days wandering the city. That description alone didn't make him sound like a pick of the bunch. However, Therese was one of the blessed child's guards, and so earned enough to support them. She also had an authority to delegate duties to lower-ranking knights, meaning she could recommend him for jobs if need be. He was a perfect age. She's going to use her role to get benefits for her family. That's a bad thing. Therese's personal preference was a guy just before they came of age. Damn, Therese. I don't know. I don't know if that's something you should be admitting. Therese, I don't know if that's something you should be admitting, girl. I guess that's why she was cuddling Rudy so much. She was loving that, apparently. I'm surprised she turned him down when he offered, when she was cuddling him. She was dreading some greasy old man over 40, so she struck gold. Claire was the one that ultimately claimed her status as a Latria meant that she could do better. For all of Dustlight's good qualities, Therese didn't intend to commit right away. Not until she met him in person. If he was good looking, she'd sink her claws in. Yeah, I do like the idea that later on she does kind of acknowledge the idea of, like, all I'm really caring about is looks. Like, she is so dead set on, I just want some handsome young man. I want that Prince Charming. And then Claire's over here, and it's probably because of Claire. Claire's off the side saying, only the best for the Latrias. A handsome man. Like, she's totally feeding into it. They gathered for a marriage interview at the Morshite family estate. These interviews were always carried out at one of the homes of the two families. There was no rule as to which, but custom was that the prospective groom's family hosted the first and the bride the second. It was the opportunity for the 6 participants to get an impression of each other's estate. The third and onward sometimes included other family members. These meetings are a great way to see any hidden debts or financial troubles. But with these two family status, this was merely a formality. That is very interesting. The idea that, yes, these two, it's like, okay, these parents get with these parents are like, yeah, let's marry our children together. And they'll go to one each other's homes. The first one here, the first one here. And yes, they'll kind of spot, okay, this maid over here looks like they're kind of grumbly. They might, get some whispers out of them that, maybe there's embezzling happening with the family. They're in massive debt. Maybe they don't have enough butlers. So that gives you a sign they're not doing well. But yeah, with these two, they're like, yeah, we're just doing it as a formality. Nobody's questioning the Latria estate.
This is my 4th daughter, Therese Latria. While my daughter is a little old and lacking in certain qualities expected in a lady, she is also, as you know, a temple knight. Should this marriage take place, she would therefore be understanding of her husband's work and able to support him. She herself is eager to be married and will be a dedicated wife.
Therese wasn't sure whether to be insulted or feel the praise, but she let it go. She never usually wore a dress, but today she had worn a blue gown. She lifted up the hem of her skirt and gave a graceful curtsy. She practiced it especially for today, or rather was forced to. I'm Therese. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. She practiced her smile too, but her clumsy execution made her wish that she applied herself more properly back in school. She froze in the middle of her introduction when she saw her potential husband's face. There, scowling at the sight of her, was a man she knew. He knew who she was as well. He was clean-shaven, and his hair immaculate. She had caught a glimpse of the well-groomed face behind a helmet. Always very proper, cleanliness next to godliness. This is awkward. Therese was sure that she didn't know any men called Dustlight. This is my 5th son, Dustlight Norshite. Although at present, he has been pressed into a dead-end, idle job. He is a devout believer and quite capable. Yeah, he is.
As such, I hope you will recognize his future potential.
Yes, Therese mumbled. He hadn't gone by that name before, but there was no mistaking him. She's seen him every day for years. Yes, he's the cleaning rag. He's the cleaning rag. I think he was the cleaning rag, the one with the cape.
It's a pleasure to meet you. Dustlight Morshite, at your service.
He introduced himself as Dustbin before, of the keepers of Anastasia. She knew beyond a doubt it was him. This wasn't such a strange coincidence. Aside from the leader, all of the keepers were required to keep their backgrounds a secret. There were a variety of reasons for doing so, but it was a primary measure to protect the blessed child. Once, years ago, the blessed child was nearly killed. Back then, the keepers hadn't existed. A unit of the Temple Knights had handled the blessed child's security. It was revealed that a traitor in the ranks had been assigned to her protection. A foreign spy had taken his family hostage, forcing him to feed them info on the blessed child. That incident led to the establishment of the Keepers of Anastasia. They were knights selected for their loyalty to Millis and the blessed child, their talent, and their anonymity. Their helmets concealed their faces and obscured their identities. The church could prevent information concerning the security around the blessed child from being leaked to the outside world. They were a deterrent to anyone with designs against the blessed child. The reason the deputy captain, Therese, didn't know their names was because she alone knew their faces. Someone had to know what they looked like. That fell on her because the deputy captain's job was to weed out imposters. But even knowing their appearance made Therese extremely dangerous as a potential traitor. This is all, like I said, this is all very, very interesting. It's very simple, but it's very interesting. The idea that, yes, way back here, when the life attempt was made upon the blessed child, that was when she was just with the Temple Knights. Therese was just a Temple Knight. And that makes sense because back then they never made any comment or mention about these Keepers of Anastasia. She was just simply a Temple Knight. And then, yes, when she got kicked out and then they met her at the port city, she mentioned the idea that, yes, I know the Temple Knights. She was with them. She was a group of the Temple Knights. But yes, since the assassination attempt, and they then form this one group, the Keepers of Anastasia. Eventually, she comes in as a captain. At that point, everybody in the group were these people with no identities. And it's probably a chance that she was brought in as a part of this group because they can tell she fought to the end to save the blessed child. If they're looking for fanatics, she seems like a person they want to have in their team because she fought to the end. She fought and protected the blessed child. She alone came back with the blessed child. Of course, that's a sign that she's loyal. But there is a struggle there that you'd think that people know Therese. But still, everybody within the group that's being brought into it, they have no identities. But she alone, as the captain, have to know their faces. Because if they walk up, okay, everybody's on duty. They walk in there. She's got to know who's walking in the door. Even if she doesn't know their name, she's got to know what they look like. Which does play into the idea of, yes, the fact that she probably was going to forfeit her life if she was kicked out of the group. There is a sense here that if you know anybody within the group and you're no longer in the group, you get fired. You're not just fired, you're probably dead. Like, even the Blessed Child said that she's probably going to end up getting killed. I don't think it was going to be so much for the idea that she was going to get killed because she, failed them, and they're just going to do it out of spite because she failed them, because she couldn't take down Rudius, but more of an idea because she knows all their faces. They have to kill her because she knows all the members of Anastasia, and if she spots them in the streets, she'll know them. And she mentions it later on. Yes, I know she knows them by their faces and what they do when they're time off. And yeah, she mentions it right here. She's extremely dangerous as a potential traitor because she knows her faces. Which this all kind of ties together with the fact that, yeah, all of them wear these goofy helmets. And yeah, Rudius was even mentioning the idea that they were all wearing helmets. They're not supposed to know each other. But it is one of those sad realities that over time, they're going to end up knowing each other. They're going to be knowing each other's demeanors, what they're doing. And eventually, yeah, at one point, they're going to peek into one of the other person's helmets and recognize them. It just happens. What Therese ought to do in this situation was pretend that she didn't notice anything. That she knew Dusk's secret was an inconvenience for both of them. She would break off the proposal like nothing ever happened, and then go back to work like nothing ever happened. That was one option, but there was also another one. Dusk's cover was blown. She could have him removed from the Keepers, but she knew that Burial Shroud had a black horse called Black Sanctus. She knew that funeral procession always went to the theater on days off. She knew that while most of them were single on account of their work, Skull Ash had a wife. There was a lot of things that she knew about all of them. If she were to use that info, she could find out their identities. Total anonymity was a pinnacle of wishful thinking. Exactly. All this stuff was probably mentioned. At some point, Funeral Position probably said, man, I went to the theater and it had this great thing happened. And yeah, granted, it kind of gives a sense that they all kind of just stand around the Blessed Child and make comments about the Blessed Child. And maybe they don't sit there and kind of, go off to the side for a break and just like, they're smoking something, they're just talking to each other about their wife or whatever. But every now and then something's going to slip out. Maybe the Blessed Child asked them about their wife. Like, what if at some point the Blessed Child looked at, Skull Ash and said, how's your wife doing? It could be that simple. So Therese rejected the idea of having Dusk kicked out. Perhaps that was her full reasoning. But perhaps it was because he wasn't bad looking. She maintained a ladylike smile as the parents continued the interview. Marriage interviews amongst the Mills aristocracy began with parents recommending their children. What kind of person they were, what was special about them, why they were suitable partners. They were carried out in this fashion because, so the custom went, the first mandatory thing needed for this to work was the parents' approval. The children listened to the speeches, and they would give them an idea of their prospective partner. The parents would say things that the child would shy away from. So it was an important step. Unfortunately, Therese was spacing out. After the parental recommendations were over, the two of them were left alone to talk. No matter what world you were in, no one wanted their parents hanging around on a date. They could now learn one another's likes and dislikes, laugh over trivialities, say everything they couldn't while in front of their parents, or apply some seduction. Amongst the ladies of Millis, it was generally understood that this alone time was crucial for sealing the deal. This is where you had to show off your best if you wanted to win the heart of your dream guy. It was equally important if you needed to push away the man you had no interest in. I do like the look into these kind of traditions as much as, some people be like, oh my gosh, that's a misogynistic patriarchal word. It's some interesting stuff. Phew. Therese stood as soon as the parents left, while Dusk stayed where he was. She went to the window. I forgot about this. Then stood with her feet shoulder-width apart, her hands clasped behind her back. Then her head girlishly cocked to one side as she turned around. Had she been a teenager, it may have seemed charming, beautiful, elegant, all things that would help win over a guy. For Therese's age, it was more likely to just make them embarrassed for her. Poor Therese, come on, she's cute. I would have liked this to be a shot in the light novel right here. And you can go ahead, even have that little cut, half, maybe the lower third cut, and then have just Dustbin's face just, oh God, what the hell is she doing? Her eyes weren't laughing, though. This wasn't a game. She was serious. Dust felt a chill run down his spine. She was on the hunt. You're very charming, Dustlight, she said with her best simpering voice. Therese figured that she might as well marry him as anyone. He wasn't such a bad catch. Rather, he was a good one. Sure. You'll find out in a second. It's not so much so true.
He was passionate about his job. Yeah, and would never divulge a secret. This whole thing had been an unfortunate coincidence, but now that he was here, she knew he'd rise to the occasion.
Captain Therese?
Oh, please don't be so formal. We're to be married after all. Her hand floated up to touch her cheek. Then she began to walk slowly to him. Dusk couldn't conceal his shudder as it ran through him, but he was otherwise frozen like a prey animal. Dustbin, the most quick-witted of the keepers, couldn't move. Eventually, Therese, having closed the distance between them, sat beside him. Dustlight, I think we should fare well together. If we got married, I hear your work isn't going so well. My rank is still captain after my demotion. Though I might not look it all dressed up like this, I get a good salary. You needn't worry about providing for the family. Therese Morsight doesn't have a nice ring to it. She edged towards him as he recoiled. He kept shuffling away, only to eventually find the end of the sofa. He had to do something.
Wait.
Oh, I'm not waiting. She laid her hands on his. She was stronger than he expected. She meant to make sure that he didn't escape. Dusk was stronger, though. He shook her hand off, stood, and retreated to the corner of the room. Dustbin, the top of the team, ace of the keepers, ran away.
Captain, what are you doing? Is this supposed to be funny?
Funny? She was shocked to have been rejected so bluntly. Her attempt at seduction had been completely botched. It had taken her so much courage. She'd never done anything like that before. Poor girl. She showed him a side of herself that she'd been saving for her future husband. She let out another deep sigh. I don't remember her ever sighing before. When I read this, I was like, wait, she let out another deep sigh? I don't think she ever let out a sigh before. Pretending to be strangers right up to the wedding day wasn't going to work out. Of course, that should have been obvious. Why had she ever thought of marrying a secret knight would work out? It was desperation, obviously. Why did I ever think of this? Because I'm desperate. Damn it, I need a guy now. However, she was also an experienced knight. She's been through tight spots before. She stood up again, walked slowly back to the window. It's like reset. She planted her feet shoulder length apart, clasped her hands behind her back, wondering why she was attempting the same pose again. Dusk watched confused. All right, well, I'm still going to call you Dustlight.
Captain Therese?
You've messed up, Dustlight. I can't believe you blew your cover like this.
Yes, Captain.
The authority in Therese's tone crushed his voice. She turned around slowly to face him. Unlike last time, she moved purposely, like a knight. There was a tiny dust reflection in her eyes, but he saw that his terrified scowl had been replaced by a shamed frown. Explain yourself. How did this happen? Shouldn't you have bothered to check the name of your potential bride?
I'm sorry, Captain. I made a mistake. I never thought it would. I thought you, Lady Therese, I thought you were long married, so I didn't think to check.
Was he trying to piss her off? Therese wanted to snap back, but she restrained herself. Under these circumstances, I have no choice but to use my authority as a deputy captain of the Keepers of Anastasia to dismiss you. Failing to do so would expose the blessed child to undue risk. Dusk stayed silent. As you are well aware, I am not strong. I've always done my best, but I don't have talent for the blade or magic like the rest of you. I'm as average as they come. If someone wished to harm the blessed child, they could easily take me prisoner. This rolled easily off her tongue, her mind racing, without any particular destination. If I were somehow gone, the overall power of the Keeper of Anastasia wouldn't be diminished. I believe that I am well suited for the role of commander, but you are each strong enough to fight individually without me leading you. However, now I know who you are. Under torture, I would give you up. I would tell him that you are Dustlight Morsight, fifth son of the House of Morsight. Anyone who sought to harm the blessed child would doubtless come after your family and demand that you give up the others to protect your parents and siblings. You wouldn't know. So instead, they tell you to take out the others one by one. They may even tell you to kill the blessed child yourself. I cannot allow that to happen. And so, I thought, what if the two of us were family? Then you could protect me. Then we could avoid putting the blessed child in danger. Yes, it's a good plan. A masterful plan, don't you think? Therese concluded. I mean, it's not a bad option. I mean, there is a side of it that is like, was she doing this for the sake of protecting Dust? Because at this point, she should technically out the fact that she knows his identity. For the sake of the blessed child, she should do that. And the reverse is true as well. If she doesn't tell anybody, if she doesn't report this, what if somehow the parents of Dust, what if they report it? Like, yeah, we went to their house and we overheard them talking about this. That yes, she is his superior. And then we made that connection to there. Something like that. Now, granted, they're not going. They shouldn't know what Dust is doing. Even their family probably doesn't even know. But still, somebody can get word, and then she'll be in trouble for that, for not reporting it.
But there is an element here where I almost wonder if she was trying to protect him because she's like, but I know he's super devoted. I can report this, but I know he would never do this. Right here, she's saying there's a chance that I would out you if I was tortured. I feel, at least with Dustbin right here, it's plainly written here. I feel the Keepers, there might be some that are not as strong as Dust. I believe at least Dust is super devoted for Blessed Child. I've never got a sense that Therese is. That's always been the oddity. Now, granted, she literally stood before the Blessed Child and faced off against a bunch of assassins. That shows devotion. But it doesn't seem like she's breathing, and thinking the Blessed Child all the time. So while both Dust and Therese would give their life to protect the Blessed Child, I feel like Therese does it by duty, whereas the others, they do it because they're obsessed with her. Like, they're super devoted to her. It kind of goes back to, like, the whole thing where when Rudius first met Therese, she kind of gave the indication, like, yeah, these guys are fanatics. They're crazy. Like, she's accepting that Rajerd is right there with them. These guys are crazy. It's almost like levels, I guess. It's always levels. But this is a good move by her. I mean, yes, she's doing it because she's desperate to get married, but it's like, yeah, technically this is a win-win situation here. Yeah, I think this guy's good looking. He'll protect my family. But the break is realizing I kind of want love too. It's almost like it comes to the conclusion of I kind of would like a guy that would love me too. So yeah, this can't work. Therese concluded her rambling argument. While she spoke, Dust's demeanor changed. Before, he had been leaning away from her and looking uncomfortable. Now he stood straight and mouth in a hard line. His eyes gazed steadily at Therese, like she might eat him.
Captain, that's impossible.
Impossible? What do you... She stammered, feeling like she'd been clubbed over the head. But then, she had to admit, she wasn't young. Dust was hardly the most marriageable age himself, but she was a fair bit older. Still, she was a Latria. That meant she was good-looking, and her duties as a knight kept her active, keeping her figure. She came from a perfectly good family, so, in the end, it had to be her personality. Would you mind, explaining why? Is it impossible? Could she change her personality? If it were possible, she'd fling herself to his knees and beg him for marriage. She's desperate. Damn, girl.
If the Blessed Child were in danger, I would kill my whole family to protect her.
What?
That would remove the possibility of hostages. After that, I would kill everyone who threatened the Blessed Child, even if it meant sacrificing myself. Thus, what you say is impossible. It is impossible that the Blessed Child would ever be put in harm's way.
His eyes were deranged. The wheels in Therese's mind turned more slowly until, at last, the gears re-engaged. Dustbin, she realized, was a fanatic. He was madly dedicated to the Mills doctrine, and that was why he pledged his life to defending the Blessed Child. She was a reincarnation of St. Mills himself, the symbol of his faith. That's interesting. I don't think I've ever heard them say that she's a reincarnation of St. Mills. Now, this could be implying that he is a fanatic of the Blessed Child and believes in his mind that she is basically a reincarnation of St. Mills himself. But there could be some sort of doctrine that claims this. They've never really stated anything like that before, so I'm guessing right here it's more implying the idea that Therese looking at Dustbin is like, this guy believes that the Blessed Child is basically St. Mills himself. So I think that's kind of a flip there. He worshipped her and would do anything to protect her. His was an unwavering belief. He never doubted. All of the Keepers were like this. As she thought this, Therese's desire to marry him vanished like a bursting bubble. Her heart came around to the realization that she misjudged him. Why did she want to marry a guy like this? She knew he was like this. She'd lost her mind. She'd gotten so desperate and forgot. She'd mistaken what she wanted to see for reality. She convinced herself, as long as he was good-looking, that it was enough. Therese was left with only one good option. Just flip it. Just fake it. Just fake it. Well said. This is the quality that makes you worthy amongst the faithful to protect the Blessed Child. This was a desperate bid to save her pride.
Thank you, Captain. You honor me.
From this day forth, you are to be ever vigilant and ensure that never again do you make such a blunder.
You have my word, Captain.
With that, her pride was safe. As a deputy captain, she had tested the faith of her subordinate, who revealed his identity. She determined that he could be allowed to continue as a keeper. No deputy captain would ever try to seduce her subordinates because she was desperate to get married. That was ridiculous. Yeah, never. Finally, Dustbin smiled.
But Captain, That performance was brilliant. I was horrified.
Oh, this poor girl. She kind of deserves it. She kind of deserves it right here in this moment. She kind of deserves it because she's trying to flip this. So you gotta take your hits, girl.
Were you really?
The way your eyes glittered. I never thought you'd really come onto me like that, Captain.
She was horrifying. The blood rushed to her head. She shouldn't have to put up with this. Not from this dip lackey. She really given it her best shot. Sure, she wished that she had applied herself to more proper manners at school. But even so, I was captivating.
Huh?
I was so beautiful, so gorgeous. You weren't sure if you could restrain yourself, right? The force of her tone broke on contradiction. Cold sweat ran down Dusk's forehead. His back was sticky, and tremors rattled his legs. Fear, dustbin of the keeper of Anastasia, whose unshakable faith allowed him, unflinching, to face down the strongest opponents, was scared. I could just marry you, you know. In fact, maybe I should. You're a careless guy. How can I know something like this won't happen ever again? If you marry me, you at least don't have to worry about any more marriage proposals.
But
I'm kidding. I'm rejecting you. We were both off duty today, but we'll be at the blessed child's side again tomorrow. Don't be late.
Yes, Captain.
Therese's skirt fluttered as she turned and strode from the room, looking every inch a knight. Dusk watched her go, then wiped away the sheen of cold sweat from his forehead. It scared the crap out of him. This dude lost like 20 years of his life right there. That was good. That was good. It's like it goes from like her desperation, like she realized this thing, crap, I have to do this. But hey, this could actually work out, and he's kind of good looking. So she's going to basically force the whole thing because she's just looking at looks. She's just going by appearance. As long as I have a younger guy and he looks good, that's my Prince Charming, I'm good. I don't want to end up with a 40-year-old nasty guy or something like that. She just does not want to get with somebody that is unappealing. She's just focused on a handsome man. I'll grab anything. And this guy, he's all right. Dust, he's all right. So she's kind of pushing the whole thing, and she's forgetting that this guy's a fanatic, that all this guy cares about is a blessed child. And then it kind of shifts towards the idea of maybe I would like somebody that does care about something besides the blessed child. I don't know that I want to be with a fanatic. And yes, it's kind of scary, the idea that this dude's literally saying, I'm going to slaughter my entire family to make sure nothing happens. Okay, this guy's crazy. And then she shifts it to try to freaking throw him off by claiming that it was all a test, but she ends up kind of turning it into saving his life. Again, I think that if she were to report this, he'd probably end up dead. I don't think it's going to be as simple because his identity has been revealed. I don't think it'd be that simple. Yes, he could claim that he doesn't know the identity of the other people, and it's just his identity has been revealed, but he at least knows their processes. He knows where they go, what their schedule typically is, things about their security, who holds the keys, where the keys goes, all that kind of stuff he could know. And thus he'd be a threat. So she's basically saving his life by kind of washing their hands of this whole situation. But she still wants to keep her pride. So she has to do this whole thing, flutter that skirt, look like a knight, walk out the door, end it on a good note.
That was a correct decision. You appear to be unhappy about it, but a man of that caliber cannot be a suitable match for daughter of the Latrias. That was a practice round. I shall find you a better partner next time, so make sure that you use what you've learned this time, so that you may conduct yourself as a lady.
I wonder. There's a side of me that's like, I don't think Claire would go through this whole process, get within the family, and bring in a son, possibly make them look bad or whatever, all for the sake of testing her. This is all a test. I'm happy that you chose this because he wasn't of the caliber of our family. Now, it could be this is her first meeting of Dust, and maybe she's seen him and said, nah, this guy's not good. Okay, yeah, go in there, do your thing. Okay, you chose not to, good, because he's not good. But this could also be her just being nice to Therese, saying this to make sure that Therese doesn't feel like she failed here. No, you did a good job. I'm going to find somebody better next time. This is all a test. You did good. Claire got into the swing of a long lecture when they returned home. Therese felt twinge of unease. Her first match had been Dust. On paper, he was an adequate candidate, but in reality, it was a catastrophic match. She worried that if Claire went on searching, she might end up similarly unsuitable matches. I understand, Mother. For one thing, it would be hard to turn around and announce she'd thought better of it after she was the one who had gone to Claire for help. And the truth was, she really did want to get married. There was no way that Claire would bring her more awful matches. Watch this be a regular thing. Like every single volume has a chapter where Claire brings her another person as somebody worse. Like the next extra chapter, Therese finds a husband and it's literally like, I don't know, the Pope or Cliff. The Pope sets Cliff up with Therese. There was a side of me that thought that was going to be it. Because yes, when I got to this chapter, I'm like, okay, who possibly could they have set up with her? But then when I read Dust Light, I was like, never mind, maybe it's not going to be somebody we know. No, it is Dust, okay? As I was thinking through all the options, yes, Cliff was the first one that came to mind. I'm like, watch Cliff ends up being, because again, he said that he has a lady, but he hasn't presented her yet. And so there was like a side of me that wondered, does Pope know that? And will they end up kind of dragging Therese in there to meet Cliff? And then it turns this whole doofy thing where they're alone. He's like, just walk away, please. Other than that, I couldn't really think of anything. I'll do my best.
That's the spirit, Therese. I know you're busy with your work, but be sure not to skimp on your studies and your practice. You want them to see you as a lady.
Yes, mother. Next time, she would meet a good man. She was sure of it. Before long, Therese certainly would be rewarded. But that was a story for another time. Again, they're going to do it in the chapter. They're totally going to do this again. Yeah, anyways, that's a really fun chapter. It was cute. The interesting stuff in there is, I like how sometimes with these kind of more goofy chapters, that doesn't seem like it has much substance to the overall story. Refugian still manages to throw a lot of lore in there. And again, this is a lot to do with the Temple Knights, the Keepers of Anastasia, their systems, how they protect the Blessed Child, all that stuff. But yes, let's get into, I guess I'll do this damn chapter. Extra chapter, the monkey and the wolf. I do want to mention, when I read this chapter title, I was livid. Because when I thought of this, I'm like, okay, the monkey, obviously that's Geese. And right now, Geese is the enemy. Right now in the story, Geese is the enemy. But who's the wolf? The wolf, I was like, oh gosh, don't tell me he's going to meet up with Ghislaine. The only wolf that I could think of at the time when I seen that title was Ghislaine. And I was like, okay, so what is he going to do with Ghislaine? Is he going to recruit Ghislaine? I don't see Ghislaine working with Geese against Rudius, because Ghislaine fully well knows Rudius equals Edis. And she has pretty much devoted herself to protecting not just Edis, but Rudius too. Again, that whole chapter where Ghislaine was heading off to the Ostra Kingdom with Rudius and Edis, Elise said, protect those two children. And Ghislaine was like, that's another thing that I have to always remember. This was a thing in her list of bullets points that she has to do. Protect Rudius and Edis. And I think she still has that mindset. I don't see any reason why she would join Geese, unless it were to unravel some sort of story about, I don't know, maybe Ghislaine and Geese had a thing. Maybe they were really close when they were in the party together. It could be. Not that they have to be physically attracted to each other, but just simply the fact that Ghislaine respected Geese in some way. He protected her, saved her life, something that she feels very drawn to him for. But yes, the other side of that was with the mindset that I don't see Ghislaine turning on Rudius, that he kills her. I was like, if this ends with Geese somehow figuring out some way to trick and kill Ghislaine, I'm going to throw this book F tier volume. I hate it. But it still ends in a way that I'm like, we're doing this. Really, we're doing this. Extra chapter, the monkey and the wolf. Geese's perspective. Geese awoke, cracking his neck and checking if all of his parts were working. No tingling in his limbs, no indigestion, no weird growls, no more growths on his skin. Apart from the mild grumbling of his belly, he was fit as a fiddle. He went out of his tent, stretched, and yawned while looking at the sun rising. The direction of the sun, compared to his map and a ridged line, set the current location. He checked yesterday too, before the sunset, but things looked different in the morning. It was important to check 2 or 3 times. It was mostly idiots who didn't confirm where they were, who would get lost. Here was another thing that was kind of telling me he's going to go meet Ghislaine, because he's mentioning basically something that I would probably see him attributing to Ghislaine. But again, this is the mindset of somebody like Geese. We're going to get into the mindset of him and how he's constantly thinking about things like this. This is why he doesn't get lost. This is why he always prepares for things. West today, huh? He worked out where he needed to go, but no one was around to reply. Last night, the man god came to him in his dreams again. He told him to go west with the rising sun, rest at the roots of the 3rd tree on Fennel Boulevard, then get on the 5th carriage that passed. He'd ride the carriage for a while, then get off at the town that he'd arrived in. At that point, he would stay at the New Leaf Inn. He claimed that it would keep him out of the hands of Rue Quagmire's mercenary band. It didn't make sense to the average guy, even be suspicious. It's not like the man god tells you why you have to do everything you do just so. Just at some point in the course of your life, you wind up doing something a little different to what he told you to, and bam, they got you. Geese understood it. Back in the day, he used to pull stuff like that himself. These days, though, he lived by the man god's words. That's the right way to live, he thought.
far as he's concerned, the man god's word is law. He knew that it didn't always turn out perfect. Sometimes his advice got him into some pretty gnarly situations. It wasn't even uncommon, but that didn't matter to Geese. Whether he did what the man god said or not, sometimes happens. Life's not all sunshine and roses. One thing he could say, though, as long as he obeyed the man god, he didn't die. How did he know that? Geese was as weak as they came, but he got through some majorly dangerous situations and lived to tell the tale. He watched a lot of tough guys, way beyond his level, slip up and die. It's pathetic, actually. These guys were always swaggering around like they were the king badasses. Then when they were about to die, they started blubbering and begging for their lives. Geese knew that everyone's a little pathetic, but guys that go down like that are always the dudes who go around bragging that death didn't scare them. Bona fide hero types, every single one of them. Don't it make you sick? People try to avoid death. That's nature. Instincts tell us all that dying is bad, that it's f***ing scary. Geese is scared of it too. He didn't want to die. And that's why as long as the man god gives him advice that keeps him alive, that's all he needed. The man god is the reason he survived this long. You could say that he was Geese's guardian angel, or whatever the evil version of that is. I don't know. The devil. Sold your soul to the devil. The story about how Geese got his chance to repay the man god started a few years ago. He was passed out drunk in a tavern in Ostra. Like usual, when the man god spoke to him, said he had a request. Now, his request pretty much never ended well. The last time he had one for him, his hometown got wiped off the map. Geese wept enough for a lifetime and screamed until his voice gave out. This time, no doubt, it would just be as bad. The man god likes to make you think that he's on your side and then break you. Back when his hometown got destroyed, the man god showed up, laughing at his shocked face. Geese expected all that, but this time, something was different. He didn't get this far in life without knowing how to read people. He could tell the man god was in a serious bind, and he'd come looking for help. That's why Geese accepted. He did think that it might be an act, but the dude's not exactly an actor. Plus, if he really got in a jam, Geese had no hesitation about lending a hand. A debt's a debt after all, and he owed him big. The man god said that Rudius had betrayed him. In reality, he probably shown up to give a good laugh at Rudius, like he'd done with Geese, and it hadn't gone how he'd wanted. It kind of implying there already that, like, yeah, this guy probably did the same to Rudius, but it didn't work out how he wanted. Which implies the idea that Geese right here at least is accepting the idea that, okay, back here, my town got wiped off the map. And the man god showed up right afterwards and laughed at me. And the mindset there for us as the readers, knowing what went through Rudius and what is now happening to Geese, that he did something similar to Geese that he did to Rudius, or at least future Rudius. The Rudius that at some point lost Roxy, and then the man god laughed at his face. So at least right here, it seems like Geese is applying, yeah, he probably did the same thing to Rudius. So there's a correlation there. At least he should be able to understand what Rudius is going through right now. But the flip side of that is that following this whole ordeal with Geese and the man god, him laughing in his face and losing his hometown, Geese accepted it and moved forward. And now he's going, Rudius, why aren't you doing the same? Why aren't you doing the same? I did it. Now, the curious question is, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't actually get into it with this, so it's probably going to be something they're going to get into when it comes down to Rudius really facing off against Geese, is possibly why the man god wanted to get rid of Geese's hometown. Did the man god want to use Geese and knew that Geese would follow him even if he wiped out his hometown, and he wiped out his hometown for the sake of making it to where Geese had to follow him anywhere? Maybe he felt like Geese wasn't leaving his hometown and he had to destroy what was there. This is anchoring you down. I need to get rid of this anchor. Or I need to get rid of this for in the future because I'm afraid of something being in that town used against Geese, and I want Geese to be a loyal servant of me. And so I got to get rid of that past. Either way, it does make you kind of wonder, what was so important about Geese that the man god did that? Was there something in Geese's hometown that was a threat to the man god directly, is the other question mark there. Was there possibly a bloodline or something in his hometown that was a threat to the man god or to something else? Anyways, the man god said that Rudius was an enemy now, that he's sided with the dragon god Orsted, number 2 of the 7 great powers, a real big shot. The details aren't important. All Geese need to know is that Boss allied himself with this big shot god, and now he was making trouble for the man god. The man god could see the future. He could see so far ahead that the demon's eye of foresight might as well be blind. You think that would make beating his enemies child play, but apparently it wasn't that simple. The man god didn't give all the details, but he did say 2 things. First, he could only see the futures of 3 people at a time. Interesting. I don't think that they've ever mentioned that before. It did mention the idea that he could only select
3 people to be disciples. And that does make sense. I think they did mention the idea of seeing their path. And so he can manipulate those paths, those 3 paths. So I guess that technically does. It's just giving the word futures, I think, is new. Second, he couldn't see Orsted's future. We're kind of getting back into that whole thing again, how he's unable to see him. Again, the man god has mentioned several times before that he can't see Orsted. And yeah, there was points where I kind of wondered if he was saying the truth there or not. This idea of almost seeing kind of this haze wherever he's at. If anything's kind of, interacting with that, he can't see it. But he also says if Orsted went and interfered with any of those 3 people whose future he's already seen, those futures would change, which technically at that point pretty much makes him blind to them. From the man god's point of view, if Orsted, and only Orsted, messed with their futures, it'd be like absolutely nothing had changed. That makes sense. From his white room, he could see the whole wide world, but Orsted was a gaping hole in his vision. That's interesting because I've always kind of wondered exactly what the man god could see. If he's only like connecting to individual people and peering into what they see and their path and manipulating it, or if the man god's sitting there in the barren world and having like this map put up on his screen, he's zooming into locations and watching people, oh, they're doing this or this. It kind of made me believe that at each one of these points of these shifts, these turning points or whatever, that he's selecting 3 people, peering into their futures, and then manipulating them in order to go a certain path. But that's all he's seeing is them and their futures. Now, he said, Rudius had inherited this little quirk of Orsted's. Yep, the band. He was under the dragon god's protection or something. Orsted has some kind of curse on him that made people fear him and see him as an enemy. So there weren't too many people like that. No one went calling for his aid, and he didn't have any allies. But Rudius is a go-between. All of a sudden, he could get loads of allies. That was bad for the man god. The funny thing is, the man god could see his own death. One day, without warning, his vision flipped. He used it to see himself towering over where Orsted lay fallen. Yeah, that's a doof. I think that first where shouldn't be there. Over where Orsted, where he lay fallen. Couldn't finish this volume without one more. Damn it, Seven Seas. Kicked him as he lay there. Now, it was Orsted doing the laughing and kicking. Why could he see that moment? Probably because at that moment, Orsted and the man god were both in the same place. He saw that vision through his own eyes, and that meant he could see Orsted too. Geese didn't worry about the details of how the man god's power worked. What mattered was that Rudius was now a threat. So it's implying the idea that the man god is using his power on himself to see his own future. In that future, he at some point was seeing himself towering over Orsted where he had fallen. And again, that implies the idea of he's questioning, like, well, why do you see that? That implies that Orsted came there to the barren world at some point, and the man god fell on him, took him down, and he laughed at him, kicked him when he was down. But at some point, that changed. One day, without warning, his vision flipped. He used to see himself laughing over him, kicking where he laid. Now, it was Orsted doing the laughing and the kicking, implying the idea that he has been fallen, and Orsted is kicking him and laughing at him. I find it curious that Geese is actually questioning this power. I mean, he's already established before that he could see 3 people's futures, that he's already seen the futures. He's, working to change them, whatever. And then right here, he's going, now, yeah, it's weird right here how this is working. It's almost like he's questioning it. Yeah, I can guess that you can question, why is the man god able to see his own future? Or possibly, a good question here really is to have, is the man god seeing his own future, or is he looking at the future of somebody in that room? That's a good question mark right there. Is there somebody in that room, seeing that the man god has fallen Orsted, is kicking him and laughing at him? Or possibly because Orsted's in that room, in the barren lands, suddenly the man god can look into Orsted's eyes, look into his future. That's the question mark there. Is it the man god seeing his own future, or is the man god seeing somebody's future that is there present? I don't see any reason why the man god can't see his own future, that he can't look into his own future and see this moment. But it is curious that Geese right here, like I said, is questioning this, because based on what he knows, why would you question it? With all the times they brought up the 3, I am curious that at some point they're going to reveal that there's a 4th, that he's always been monitoring one other person. Maybe it is continuously being Rudius, but he is pointing here that he can no longer see Rudius. He's now like Orsted. What mattered now is that Rudius was a threat. The man god needed Rudius taken out, and he'd already tried a bunch of plans to kill him. No matter what he tried, though, nothing worked. In the Ostra Kingdom, he tried pitting the North Emperor and the Water God against him. Neither of them got the job done. Not only did Orsted come out fine, but he couldn't even take down Rudius. Rudius went on his merry way, still recruiting. So the man god hatched a plan. If 3 disciples weren't enough to take down Orsted, he'd just make more. They'd copy Rudius. Orsted couldn't build alliances himself, but with Rudius as a go-in-between, he wrestled up a whole network of helpers. The man god could only work through 3 disciples at a time. But so long as Geese was gathering allies, he'd end up with more than 3. It was a sweet idea. That's interesting. I guess the idea here, and I'm curious about if this is where it's going to end up going, is the idea of, is he creating shorter turning points or whatever, shorter points in which he changes his disciples? Or is it simply that he can talk to anybody, it's just that he can only see the future of 3 people? So he might have Geese as a designated disciple, somebody that he's seen into his future, somebody that he is tracking his path, but he's able to talk to a bunch of other people to send to him at the same time. Because we'll find out here in a minute, yes, he's talking to these people in their dreams, telling them to go to a certain point, or seek out Geese himself, and then Geese is going there and talking to them. But if he could only do 3, then that means that Geese is only going to get 2 other people. This makes me believe that he can talk to whoever he wants. It's just disciples specifically, ones that he's looking to their futures, it's only 3. Geese would take on the job of wrangling those allies. He did wonder why the man god went with him, but then the man god's usual playbook when he was finished using somebody was to trample on everything they loved and throw whatever was left in the trash. So maybe he was the last guy he had left. He's like, why is he using me? I'm a weak person. Yeah, he's probably ruined everybody else. Once again, acknowledging the man god's a horrible person. It's so bizarre that he's still welcoming this. Once Geese was done building an army, the man god would have them all strike at once. Bye-bye, Rudius. And that's how Geese ended up here, running his tail off, finding people for the man god. The deadline was the man god's right moment. Not much time left, but he wasn't doing bad. Not that finding allies was easy. Here's how the tag team went. The man god told Geese, that guy, and Geese would meet them, butter them up with smooth talking, and tell them the meetup point for the right moment. Everyone the man god sent Geese were sketchy as hell. They could get the job done for sure, but they were all a little cockeyed. Half followed the conversation, had weird issues, or just couldn't be read. Of course, that was probably why they'd sit still for a guy like Geese. Main problem was there weren't a lot of them. Including Geese, they could be counted on 2 hands. What they lacked in numbers, they made in muscle. From world-famous warriors to dudes that would fit in a fairy tale of Millis. They were all top of the class. Geese tried to suggest that they should hire a couple 100 generic types with gold, but that got the thumbs down. The man god was nervous of traitors. He wasn't wild about this business, taking on people whose futures he couldn't see. Yeah, right there he's technically implying that he has seen their futures, so he must be switching it on a regular basis. That was fair. The man god wasn't exactly popular. Rudius had a knack for winning people's hearts and minds. Worried about something? He'd be there worrying with you. Got a problem? He'd solve it for you. No matter how much you lag behind, he'd wait for you to catch up. And even though he got crazy power levels, he's nice to those who didn't. That's why they couldn't rely on numbers. The man god was right. The other problem was that Geese wasn't a charismatic type. He can't work a crowd. Every ally was a potential enemy, so they couldn't take on too many. They'd also be more likely to end up with idiots who didn't listen to a plan. That was all you needed to turn a winning position into a losing one. So they stuck with a select few. If nothing else, these guys wouldn't turn traitor. They turned out to be pretty useful for all their quirks. With their help, they'd suss out Rudius and Orchid's weak points. Geese could be speaking out of line, but he thought the man god could be a little bit more trusting. That's kind of feeding into my theory on the man god and Rudius. I think that guy could be a little more trusting. It wouldn't even matter who they were, but if they had numbers, it would increase their options. You don't get the big money unless you took a few risks. At the end of the day, he was the boss, and Geese was the disciple. The man god did have a few words for him, this time though. He wondered why Geese didn't kill Rudius when he had the chance. He said that he could have poisoned him. The thing is, Geese had to be true to himself. The best way to put it was, betraying the boss would, if looked at from the right angle, be the same as betraying Paul. He could never have betrayed Paul, so he couldn't murder his son. Geese had a code to follow. The man god didn't buy that argument though, but Geese knew himself. If he tried to poison Rudius or whatever, he knew he would have choked before he went through with it. Along the way, he would have gotten cold feet. But after Rudius turned traitor, there was no more fear of that. He made up his mind for real now. Rudius was his enemy. This segment just feels so off. I'm really wondering if this whole segment here has a few points in it that are badly translated. Because what it establishes here, like I said before, my key thing with Geese was that I was considering the idea that Geese is, yes, very set on the man god. I can't do anything without him, and thus I can't betray him. But there was a side of me that almost felt like Geese was playing it out similar to what Rudius went through with Orsted. This idea that I have no choice. I have to do this because the man god wants me to do this. So Rudius gets strong. He's giving Rudius a warning. Why would he send that letter? Why would he give the letter? Right here, it's implying that he was trying to give Rudius a leg up because he didn't want to do something underhanded because it's just not his style. But the way it words here is weird because he says the man god got mad because he didn't kill Rudius while he was there, implying that when Geese was in Millis, he could have easily killed Rudius because he had his trust. Why didn't you poison him or something? But Geese said that he had to stay true to himself. Betraying the boss would be the same as betraying Paul. He couldn't kill Rudius, murder Rudius, because it would be like betraying Paul. So why now? It makes me believe that part of this is back when Geese was with Paul and the party, that he could have killed him then, but he couldn't do it then because he would be betraying Paul. Because when Geese was in Millis, he'd already gotten in his head that Rudius is betraying the man god. So why would it be after doing this Millis stuff and the man god getting onto him for not poisoning him that he would suddenly say, but now I know for real that Rudius is a traitor? Why did it take the whole thing in Millis to see Rudius as a traitor and now be okay with killing him? It kind of makes me feel like this beginning segment is them in the Beggar Continent. But it never implied back then that he was after Rudius. But he could have been. But he's saying 3 years ago. None of this, again, this paragraph doesn't make any sense. But in the end, what it does imply is that Geese has not killed Rudius up until this point. The one thing we can, even though it is kind of mixed up where and when this stuff happened, it does imply here that the reason Geese never killed him before was because he'd be killing Paul's son. And key thing here, he didn't want to betray Paul. So at least it implies that Paul is above the man god to him. For at least for Geese, it's Paul, the man god, and then everybody else. So that is a kind of a nice thing that comes from this whole thing, which does kind of bug me, the idea that Geese would be willing to kill Paul's son, despite not wanting to betray Paul in light of the man gods pushing him. But still, it also could just simply be the idea of doing an underhanded kill. He wouldn't want to do that because it says specifically murder. Murder's different than just, an all-out battle against Rudius. So again, it is also kind of implying the idea that this is coming down to the idea of not so underhanded tricks that he would probably choke, but rather, I want to face him head on, because otherwise I'll just screw it up anyways. Now at present day, Geese was getting ready to set off for yet another day of sniffing out talent. How many was it up to now? 3 or 4? Every one of them was worth an army themselves. He never thought he'd meet this caliber of guy, let alone talk to them. Far as he was concerned, they were all stuff of legends and way out of his league. However, when Geese talked to them, they all seemed like ordinary guys, even if they had some personality issues. Especially the first one. He was famous enough. Even you might know him. But damn, he really was just another guy. I wonder if this is stated before or after the rest of this chapter. Because if the rest of this chapter is going out to get that one guy, because I think he even names how many people they have, and I think it's less, then that would imply that it's Gal Farion. I'm assuming it's Gal Farion. Then we already know that person because they're extremely famous. They're a very famous swordsman. But outside of that, just another guy. It couldn't be Randolph because he's weird. He's super weird. He would not be just another guy. It could be Soldat. I don't know. When I hear another guy, it makes me believe that it's somebody that's just very, very generic and normal. So it wouldn't be somebody like Bodyguardy or... I mean, it could be going for personality. Just another guy that's just a personality. But I'm already kind of feeling at this point, it's going to be a lot of people in that, the Great Powers. I think it's going to be a lot of people in there, like the Fighting God. Maybe, wow, if he actually found the Technique God, that'd be crazy. People that we know right now would be, for guys, Bodyguardy, Randolph. Maybe the guy that raised Randolph, but I don't know that he would leave the King Dragon realm. I'm really considering Atof will end up being one of them. I don't want it, but I'm very much so considering Nina or Isolde is good. Either one of the two, Isolde or Nina, is going to end up being one of them. With the fact that who I think the person in this chapter might be, I don't think it will be Nina, but it could be Isolde. I don't think Soldat. I really don't see Soldat. I think Soldat is incredibly strong, but he's not... I don't know that he's up in the legendary status, nor is he that well known. I mean, Step Leader is seemingly well known. I don't know. The possibilities are endless. I could speculate all day. But the fact that he says even you might know him does technically imply it's somebody like Bodyguardy or something like that, or Randolph. But again, I'm curious if it's implying what we're getting into in a minute. Before Geese set off, the man god had him do some busy work. He grabbed a blade of a demon's sword lying rotting in the back of an old storehouse of junk in the Ostra Kingdom. He got a hilt from a burial mound in the King Dragon realm, and then took them to be reforged at a blacksmith who handled demon weapons. He also got a hold of some alcohol made by a pretty shifty tribe on the demon continent, as well as a few other odds and ends. Geese, of course, had no clue what any of this was for, but based on what the man god said and what was coming, he could see how it might be handy. It was better to be overprepared. Geese did some snooping himself, but he couldn't beat the man god in gathering intel, so a lot of effort went to waste. After that, Geese headed north on the man god's instruction. Unlike Rudius, Geese didn't have any ancient dragon tribe displacement relics, so he was limited in travel time. However, there was a few other teleportation circles around. That was weird. Dragon tribe displacement relics. I'm guessing that's talking about the items that they're using in order to contact Petagoose and having Petagoose, transport him around, or at least the teleportation circles that are up there, because that's basically the idea. He's being pulled there, and there's a whole bunch of teleportation circles at the bottom, so he's able to kind of do this whole, there's a hub, like a central hub with multiple locations to go to. So that kind of implies, one, the idea that Geese does not know about Rudius having a bunch of teleportation circles in his home, or at least at the office. But additionally, the idea of calling that an ancient dragon tribe displacement relic is the item that they're using to get a hold of, Petagoose and Armamfi. But yeah, apparently he has a bunch of other circles that he could do. But it's weird that's called a displacement relic. A displacement relic. It's a really weird name to have it. Geese didn't know if Orsted knew about them or not, but it seemed like he wasn't using them. There was only a few of them, and they couldn't get you absolutely anywhere. But still, they came in handy. On the man god's say-so, Geese went to the town closest to his final destination, stocked up on cold weather gear, and then plotted out in the snow that was beginning to pile up. He'd be heading to a ravine in the middle of the forest, and the forest was home to monsters that he'd definitely run into. A guy like Geese had no business going alone without any weapons or defense. Still, he had some tricks. The man god told him to enter the forest at a certain time. That would allow him to get from point A to point B without being bothered. He'd get very specific timing and descriptions for the places for the man god. There would be no sign that this advice worked, and no explanation why he ought to do it. All he knew that if he didn't follow it to a T, something bad would happen. The cave under Eternal Tree that he was told to stand by for a period of time was something that Geese was aware of. He was, of course, an S-rank adventurer. Snowbucks used them as a nest. Giant deer-like beasts lived in them when they were infants. They spent winter there and came out in spring. They holed up to protect from predators. The biggest of those predators was the ice claw tiger. They burrowed in the snow and pounced on their prey. One could be stalking him right at this moment, so the snowbuck would be its meal instead. That's kind of wrong. It's the idea the man god's telling him to go to this one specific tree and hang out there for a little bit, because there's a possibility there's one of these ice claw tigers following Geese to this point, and if he stays there, then the ice claw will go after the buck instead. It's kind of crazy. It's just that idea of like, this is my step. It's really hitting heavy on the idea that Geese is following these steps to a T, because he knows if he does something off, he's probably going to end up dead. And right here, it's implying the idea that if I didn't follow his words to a T, there's a possibility there's an ice claw tiger that is going to pounce out and kill me. That was the whole thing about seeing the future. Things might be dangerous, but you didn't need to worry about dying. Nothing unexpected happens. You might get a few scrapes, some bruises, but you always get the job done. Outside the forest was a ravine. A cold wind cut through the air. The cliff walls were all sheeted in ice. Chunks of it floated into the river that ran along the bottom. Geese shivered as the cold hit him. He wanted to get the hell out of here quick. Swallowing that feeling, he set off, walking a half day along the ravine until he found a path down. Following it down, he continued up the ravine until he found him, sitting against a huge boulder, cradling his sword, and roasting meat over a campfire. The meat was from a nearby corpse of a snow dragon, an S-rank monster. These monsters were sudden mutations of A-rank white drakes. They were twice the size of white drakes, breathed ice, and could use high-level water magic. Their wings weren't for flying, but helped them jump. They used their muscular legs to kick off the walls of the ravine and leap down on their prey. They were technically dragons, but they were still closer to a dragon than a white drake. They were as strong as dragons, hence the name Snow Dragon. They were seriously rare, and tyrannized and devoured whole flocks of white drakes. Not the kind of monster you went hunting alone. The man seemed to have taken it down himself. That wasn't surprising to Geese. He knew that he was the sort of guy who could do it. Now they were going to have a talk. Yeah, nice introduction to somebody sitting there in the middle of this freezing area, just chilling there with his sword. Just took down an S-rank dragon. A dragon that can take down an entire flock of A-rank drakes. We're talking about 7 great powers levels here, in my opinion. This has to be 7 great powers levels. At which point, yes, I was I think at that point, when that introduction happened, I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's got to be one of the 7 great powers. And again, we haven't met the technique god yet. We know who the dragon god is. We've not met the fighting god. We know the demon god Laplace. If they're still on the ranking, it could be another demon god since Laplace is gone. Then we have the sword god and we have the north god. Based on how the conversation started, I was considering it being the fighting god. And I'm still considering the technique god might be body goddy. But in the end, I think I came down to it possibly being the sword god of the north god. A shiver shot up Geese's spine as he approached the man. The guy could kill him, and he didn't even have to warn him. Geese knew past this point he'd be stepping in the range of the man's sword. Geese forced a smile on his face as he felt like he would cramp up. He wanted to hide his fear by radiating confidence.
Yeah?
It was a challenge, but the man's voice was deathly calm. He wasn't trying to threaten or intimidate Geese, just asking differently after the sudden appearance, like you might ask a person's name. I'm Geese.
I didn't ask you your name.
Seemed that Geese read that wrong. Geese had a lot to talk to him about, but he decided to shut up and stand there. Guys like this man hated smooth talkers, and instead had his own method of persuasion. That method was violence. The thing Geese wasn't good at. This particular guy had impeccable violence. Not wanting to start anything, Geese kept to silence.
What the hell is going on here?
It worked. Geese kept his lips zipped, and the man started talking by himself. That's like one of those ones where you're like, is this like a real strategy? Are you just fumbling through this? Because I don't really understand how this strategy is working. But yes, it technically makes sense. Somebody doesn't want to talk. It's a good way to get him to talk is just to shut up. But you're going to tick him off really quickly.
The other night, some bastard calling himself Godman or whatever showed up in my dreams, saying he wants me to help him out. Said if I heard him out, he'd make my dreams come true. He tells me about this place as proof. When I showed up, I found this thing.
He jerked his thumb at the snow dragon's carcass. The man god didn't say anything about calling him here. It would definitely annoy Geese if he had shown up here to a beast like that. He'd think that he'd been tricked.
When I was a lad, I ran up against a snow dragon and barely got out with my life. I was going to go back and kill it one day, but along the way, I forgot about it. Would you believe it? I showed up, and here it is.
So that was a man god's game. He was a pro at this type of thing, making dreams come true, or close to it. The man didn't seem to feel like he'd been tricked, even after having a snow dragon set on him. He must be one of those types. Hero types. Yeah, that's kind of funny considering who this might be. His idea that he got his butt kicked by a snow dragon, and then he's just gonna go and take it down. Like, no, let's make it clear here. When he was a lad, he ran up against a snow dragon, an S-rank snow dragon, and got out alive. As a lad, he took on a snow dragon and lived. What the dude?
So I killed it, and now you show up. A monkey face. Hey, you said you're called Geese, right?
Geese finally caught a look at the man's face as he looked at him. He didn't look especially strong. Geese spent all of his time trying to read people, so he could tell from their faces. It wasn't how rough they looked that indicated strength. It was their expression. People who's strong usually put it all out there. They worked hard every day, so they don't think of it like hardship. It's normal business to them. They have a clear image of their own capabilities, and they don't waver. That means they don't usually put up a front. This guy wasn't showing off, but he was wavering. Someone came along and torn everything he thought was true into tiny pieces. Now he was exhausted, out of patience, and at his limit. That was what his face told Geese. He got his kicked recently, beaten, half dead. This was someone who thought that wasn't possible, or at least he'd have a few years left before he declined at that point. Yeah, right here it's already kind of painting the picture of Gal Farion. Because Gal Farion, he's got a massive chip on his shoulder, and as they'll explain later on with mentioning Orsted, that's who beat the crap out of him, and he hasn't let it go since. Plus the fact they're in the north. He'd had his world rocked thoroughly, so that now he didn't know what to think. Snapped of confidence, here licking his wounds. Geese knew what his deal was. He's seen it 100 times before. None of them quite so much cut above the rest as this man was, but all strong enough in their own right. Not all was lost for this guy, though. This guy was still a master of his craft. Geese had no doubt he could use him.
Explain.
Geese finally decided to open his mouth, and he had so much to say. After the man god gave him the profile, Geese had worked up a speech, hence why he stayed quiet until now. Guys like this really flew off the handle. If you went on jabbering with smooth talk, you had to be clear and to the point.
First off, right, yeah. So I'm here as a delegate of the man god. Della what? Look, the man god will grant your dreams. In return, he's got a teensy favor to ask. He's gathering allies. I'm here as I guess what you'd call an errand boy. Getting the band together. Ha, dreams, eh? You and your boss know what my dreams are then.
The man stroked the hilt of his sword. It was scary. Talking like you know me, huh? He only stroked his hilt, but Geese knew in a blink of an eye he'd lose his head. The man's body language was loud and clear that if he didn't take him seriously, he'd be dead. Thankfully, Geese knew the man's dream. The man god told him ahead of time. He also knew why the man was lurking by himself out here. However, if that info was wrong, well, it would just be like the man god to tell it wrong. Geese prayed, hoping the man god didn't forsake him and wouldn't give him the wrong information. This happened with Rudia sometimes. It's like, yeah, that's true. He could tell me the wrong information, and maybe it's all in the man god's plan that I say the wrong information and this dude kills me. It's like putting full trust in the man god, but at the same time, fully acknowledging the man god will do things just to get a laugh out of it. The dragon god Orsted. Geese felt the temperature around him plummet. He was right on the money. If this man had no reaction, Geese would have been good as dead. They were officially in business. Geese told him something he shouldn't know. While the man's mind reeled from the shock, Geese kept talking. You want to defeat the dragon god Orsted. He beat you once, long ago. So you trained to become the strongest there is. And after a fashion, you got there. But then, you found yourself chained up by restrictions you set on yourself. No longer even trying to go after your goal, your ultimate enemy. The man god's going after Orsted too. I didn't really kind of deep dive this when I was reading the first time, so I'm going to look at this right now. You want to defeat the dragon god Orsted. He beat you once, long ago. So you trained to be the strongest, and you got there. You got super strong. But then, you found yourself chained up by restrictions you set on yourself. What is that restriction? No longer going after Orsted, your ultimate enemy. You chained yourself. Is that Nina? Is that the Sword Sanctum? Is that his responsibilities up there? Is that his own fears and doubts? That's the question. What were his own restrictions? His fears and doubts or responsibilities? I'm thinking it's fears and doubts. He has doubts in himself. He's afraid of losing. He's afraid that all of his accomplishments and pushing himself is... I almost kind of want to go back and read a lot of the earlier chapters with, if again, this is Gal Farion, of him with Edis. Because yes, at some point when she comes to him and says, I want to beat, Orsted, it's almost like he's placing it upon her. You go do it for me. I don't recall him ever say anything in those chapters about himself, any doubts he has or anything. A lot of it was really just kind of being amused by her and trying to help her with it. I think it's going to be doubt. I think he fears losing or realizing that he can't do it. The man god's going after Orsted too. Only, well, he's not going for the glory. He just wants him dead. By any means necessary, eh? And you're the means, see? Only, sorry, mate, but you don't have a chance all on your lonesome. I'll be inviting a few more to the party. Whoa there, don't glare at me like that. Was anything I said just now wrong? You know full well you're no match against Orsted alone. Bango. Right there. Geese knows. Geese was told by the man god. Geese knows he doubts himself. He knows full well Gal Farion knows he can't beat Orsted alone. That's why he hasn't done it. I will lose. But I reckon you want to try, eh? All this time, you've wanted it. Otherwise, you'd never run off from your house that you've lived at all those years. Left behind everything you depended on all that time. Ditched your family to come live like a vagabond out here. Again, ditched family. Nina. You could have had a cushy job in government. You could have gone wherever you pleased. Am I wrong? Eh? So what I'm offering to you is the right to challenge Orsted. You could roam around all day until you die, and you'd never run into him. Or he might flat out reject your challenge and send you packing. Stick with me, though, and I'll get you the best possible stage for your showdown. I'll make it so that Orsted will face you. No running or hiding. Easy now. I get it. I get what you're thinking. You reckon you're not entitled to take on Orsted, but didn't you swear an oath to yourself back when he beat you last time? You said you weren't gonna lose again. Not to Orsted. Not to nobody. And you managed it. Right up until the other day. You were undefeated. And yeah, you lost. You got your second taste of defeat. Even after you swore that oath. Again, I kind of skipped over this because I was formatting it. I didn't really read much of it. Of course, like I said, most of my pre-reading is more just me formatting and not really necessarily me deep diving so much of this stuff. This implies that he fought Orsted again. You weren't going to lose to anybody, not even Orsted, not to nobody. And you managed it up until the other day. You were undefeated, and yet you lost. You got your second taste of defeat. Now, it could be somebody else. He's only lost twice. He lost to Orsted, claimed that he'd never lose again, but then he lost again the second time. It doesn't say specifically that Orsted defeated him a second time. Just said that he'd be undefeated, but then somebody else beat him the other day. Something messed with him because he made that oath and then he lost that oath. He's bad right now. He's down bad right now because his oath, his lifetime oath, has just been destroyed by somebody. But Geese doesn't say, and yeah, you lost to him again. He just says, and yeah, you lost. You got your second taste of defeat. Even after you swore an oath. To again, not to lose to Orsid or anybody else. Who beat him? Who beat Gal Farion? It would have had been recent. I don't think it was Rejured or Bodygotti. I don't know that Bodygotti would beat him. He could, being an immortal Demon King. God dang, I didn't even catch that it could be somebody else. Who else up there would beat Gal Farion? Damn, this is okay. This is opening up way too many doors. I'm curious about. I would probably say it's either Rejured or Bodygotti. I can't think of anybody else up there that we know of at this time. Even after you swore that oath, you got walked all over, like how you usually knock out them small timers. And that's why you came slinking off like a dog to trudge around in this ravine. You're not even looking for Orsted. You're wandering aimlessly around. Yeah, I get it. You don't deserve it, right? Now that you've been beaten just that once, you've lost your right to challenge Orsted. Again, it's somebody else, because he lost to somebody else. He can't challenge Orsted. God, I'm curious who that could be. Who could beat him? There was a sharp glint in the man's eyes now. Still, he didn't come at Geese with his sword. Instead, he used his words. That's wrong. Yeah, you're right about that. It's all wrong. Totally wrong. Geese is killing my throat right now. I don't think I've ever had a problem with Geese's voice until now. I think I got something in my throat. Maybe I'm getting sick. The man caught Geese's drift. Words were getting through to him. Not deserving? As if. You absolutely deserve it. I mean, come on. Who says you gotta be number 2 before you can earn a shot at number 1? Just because someone else gotcha, does that mean that you can't take on Orsted? Who says? Nobody. Now, when you think about it like that, you got more of a right than anyone. You spent your whole life working towards it. I'm sorry. Jumping around. See, now I'm more self-conscious of this. Like last Mushoku Monday, out of nowhere, I had like 2 people, and one of them wasn't that mean about it, but it's like 2 people out of nowhere that's like, talk less and just keep reading. It's like, go listen to an audiobook or go read it yourself. This isn't Andrew reads for you. This is an analysis. This is Andrew's thoughts of Mushoku Tensei. This is not an audiobook. Curious right here, he says, who says you gotta be number 2 before you earn a shot at number 1? Now, I'm not going to take that too literally, but I want to take that literally. If we placed the Dragon God as number 1, again, I'm stuck on the 7 great powers right here, because again, somebody that can beat Gal Farion, the Sword God, which I assume is the Sword God that's in the 7 great powers. If we take Dragon God and put him as number 1, number 2 would be Fighting God. Did he run into the Fighting God? That's interesting. That's actually very interesting. Because that would imply the idea of you don't have to be number 2, and number 2 under Dragon God would be the Fighting God. Now, there is the Demon God, which I'm not sure if that's still Laplace or if that's somebody else, since the Demon God, it could still be there just because whoever's keeping track of it, which I think I theorized before was Bodygotti, could still leave it on there knowing that Laplace is going to come back eventually and leaving it on the list, or it could be somebody else taking upon themselves the ranking of Demon God. It's so crazy. We are 21 volumes in here, and we haven't had somebody break down everybody on this list. That's so shocking. I thought at some point they're going to just list out everybody that's on that list. And it's so shocking that even to now, 21 volumes in, we still don't know who every person named on this list is. Again, I can make speculations on who each one of these people are, but it's never been outright named. And again, I think it's going to come down to whoever's keeping track of it and keeping it updated, just saying that this is who it is, if it's not automatic. There was a shadow in the man's eyes. He was cracking. Just one more little push. You ought to challenge Orsted. Who cares about winning or losing? You might be weak, past your prime. Who cares? Heck, it might actually be better. Now's when you should shake off those chains. You can go face him without anything hanging over your head. Now, sure, maybe you'll get crushed. So what? What are you gonna do? Wander aimlessly? Till you get old and frail and die like a stray mutt? You really okay with that? You're not a punk, are you? So what's stopping you? Come on, join me. Then we'll take on Orsted. What do you say? After Geese finished, he reached his hand out to him. He didn't say anything. His eyes were shadowy, hesitant, faltering, staring straight at Geese. Maybe he overdid it. It was always the best policy to dump all the information you got at once, and only give the other guy a chance to think once you've set him on the path. The thing with these kind of standoffs is that if you think too much, they shut down altogether. The man was reacting to some of what Geese was saying, so he figured that he was doing all right, but maybe he wasn't the cerebral type. It'd be unexpected, but this is the kind of risk that Geese had to take. You can't force people to think the way you want by cramming words in their skulls. So overwhelming them a little bit up front would set the tone and gave them something to stew on. Geese gave the man all the math he just had to put together. But something was stopping him. He needed an excuse to swallow the bait. Geese would give that to him. If he was smarter, he'd already be on board, but he was quiet. Didn't move a muscle. It's almost like he was dead. He had no presence at all. Like he wasn't even there. Silence gets to Geese. When everything was silent, that meant he was alone. Geese was nothing on his own. All it would take is one monster lurking about to take him out. Geese wouldn't roll over with his paws up, but he wasn't about to kid himself and think that he'd win. All he could do was,
I'm not interested in becoming any man's pawn, even if it means I rot away out here.
I like this whole segment talking about him having fears of being alone. Again, this continues to play into what Geese is as a character. This is a person that can't do anything on his own. It has, throughout this entire series, it keeps harping on the fact that Geese is a failure alone. He can't do anything alone. He can't kill anything. He's not a fighter. But it's always been about his skills. He's a jack of all trades. He's skillful. He has knowledge. Now, granted, at this point, we all kind of question if that knowledge was him, or if it was always the man god, like him going through the teleportation labyrinth. Was that literally everything that the man god laid out for him? Do this, turn this direction, do this, do that, do this. But I like right here that emphasis. It's quiet. I'm alone. I'm dead. Again, he took the path that the man god told him to get there, perfectly safe. But now that he's there, it's on him, and he could die really quickly. He's always afraid of being alone. Even back when his party broke up, it sucked for him because he couldn't find another party. He wasn't a fighter. The man wasn't taking Geese's hand. Worse, he was reaching for a sword. Sweat prickled all over Geese's body. Every cell was screaming at him to run, but his brain fought back and told him to stay put. It knew he couldn't get away. This guy could cut him in pieces in a heartbeat. Still, Geese was alive. He hadn't killed him. The question was why.
Hey, Monkey Face, why are you doing this?
It felt like the man was giving Geese a chance to answer before he killed him.
You didn't think that maybe after coming to me, spouting some bullshit, I might just cut your head off and leave you sorry corpse here?
That thought had occurred to him more than a few times. Every single time Geese talked to a raging madman, he fought back the urge to scream. He'd gone through great lengths not to piss off a guy like him.
What's the dream your master granting you, eh? What are you doing this for? What for?
It was an unexpected question, but it made sense to Geese. Now that he thought about it, he must be confusing for others looking in.
I'll have you know, I'm a faithful servant of the man god. Don't give me that faith crap.
A wave of malice washed over Geese. His legs started shaking like mad. Something within him was twitching. It was so intense that it made everything up until now feel like nothing. He started wondering if maybe he wasn't already dead. Dude's scaring him so bad, he's like, I'm dead. Nothing else. Everything that he's dealt with before this was nothing to the feeling he had right then. I'm dead, aren't I? I'm already dead, aren't I?
I've run into a share of devout followers. Maniacs like those Millis Night Orders that would do anything for the precious god. I don't get that sense from you. Not one bit.
Geese was insulted to be stereotyped like that. Mills Night Orders were a bunch of bona fide fanatics. But then, maybe challenging Orsted means Geese was too. Yeah, it made sense being put that way. Number 2 of the 7 great powers, and the opponent this guy gave up his whole life to try to defeat. Well, the only one that Geese would be fighting is Boss. But Geese knew that didn't change much in comparison. Why would someone like Geese be risking his skin to fight an opponent he can't beat? One that was totally out of his league. That's all this man was asking. No one would do that without a good reason. Interesting he put it here. Again, the goal here is to kill Rudius, not Orsted. The goal that Geese has been given is to kill Rudius. I think if they kill Gorse at the same time, you don't care. But I think there's a chance that the man god knows he can't kill Orsted. When the man god was trying to get Rudius to kill Orsted, he was trying to get Rudius killed. He probably knew full well then that Rudius can't beat Orsted. Now there is a chance the man god knows about the mana issue that Orsted has, and thus he probably wanted Rudius to use up as much of his mana as possible. That way he didn't have mana to use. But again, I think then the man god wanted Rudius dead and knew that if Rudius was out of the way, then Orsted wouldn't be a problem. Because it wasn't until Rudius kind of became into the picture, probably that was the point in which Orsted suddenly started appearing in his vision as killing him. But keep it in mind again that the idea here is that Geese has to kill Rudius. The only one Geese would be fighting is Boss, Rudius. But it's sort of implying that the man god offered to Gal Farion, or this individual, that he will give him Orsted
if he helps him take out Rudius. Which I think is a total side thing. Like, yeah, sure, I'll show you where he's at. You know, after that point, who cares? I'll give you your wish to be able to take him on again. Doesn't really matter to him. But I like here that Geese puts it as, yeah, I'm not fighting Orsted, but fighting Rudius is equally, that gap is just as equal. Because I'm not a good fighter, and me taking on Rudius is impossible. Similar to anybody else taking on Orsted. But that's the question. If it's equal to anybody fighting Orsted is him fighting Rudius, why would you do it? That's what he's asking. But, why though? Why was Geese doing this for the man god? Now it was Geese's turn to fall silent. When you're talking to guys with a temper, climbing up was tantamount to a death wish. But this guy was giving Geese time. Maybe being at the top of the angry guys allows him to develop a bit of patience. I think he's genuinely curious. I think he's legit genuinely curious. Because I think there was at a time where Gal Farion was questioning why bother trying to fight Orsted again. Everything sank in silence again. Geese's thoughts stretched back, far back, way back to a time of his own birth, to the time he became an adventurer, before he met the man god. Geese was born in a little village in the south of the Demon Continent. He was the third of 5 kids of a village chief. It wasn't much, but they lived a little freer than your average villager. Back then, though, Geese felt plenty restricted. His future wife had been chosen for him when he was born, as well as his future job. The job of the son of the village chief was to live a life he was told to. So long as he pulled that off, Geese could do whatever else he wanted. The job picked for him was record keeper. He kept track of food they grew and caught, goods they got through trading, and the goods that they bought. He counted everything in the whole village and wrote it down tidily. That was it. It was important work. Over the years, he saw shops that keep slipshod books and adventurers who couldn't manage their gold. Geese got how important it was. All he thought back then was how it was boring. There was so much more he could do. If he just got the chance to pick up a sword, study magic, he'd show everyone. He could be somebody. Or maybe he could just get in the service of some country. They'll hear all about his heroics. He'd go down in history. Whenever Geese started shooting off his mouth like that, his father beat him down. Know your place was what he liked to say. Looking back, Geese reckoned that his father said it because he's seen him for what he really was. His father knew the limits of his potential. Geese didn't. Obviously. How could he know his place? He never stepped outside of it. So Geese ran away from home, abandoned his job, and stowed away in a merchant caravan. And in a nearby town, Geese's legend would begin. He was absolutely convinced of that. So he ran away before his village was destroyed. So at some point he decided that he was going to go back, but then it's gone. But reality soon caught up with Geese, and real fast. Whether it was magic or swordcraft, he was a lost cause. He couldn't even hit average. He managed just as well as anyone, battle chops aside, but he sure didn't stand out in any way. He could barely beat average when he worked his butt off. Mastery? What a joke. He tried all kinds of stuff to find his talent, but it was no good. He was firmly stuck as average. Mediocre, no matter how you looked at him. Yet he tried to make it as an adventurer. Even so, that was his dream. He'd thrown everything away for it, and he couldn't sink back to his village after all that. Geese wasn't too bad with his hands, so he tried crafting. Managed to complete some F-rank jobs. As a lone adventurer, trying not to freeze to death, he somehow kept himself afloat. It didn't satisfy him, though. F-rank adventurer jobs were just odd jobs. He was a town handyman, jack of all trades. How was that any different than back home? He hadn't run away to do this crap. He wanted thrilling adventures. He wanted to do great deeds that filled those that heard his name with awe. That was his dream. Interesting that that's his dream. So his dream's never been fulfilled. Yes, he technically became an S-rank adventurer. There's a lot of people that know him, but who knows him for like some crazy deed that he did? Other than the stupid stories that he tells. It does technically feed into how Geese runs around and tells these stupid stories. Is that him trying to make people believe that he's something special? Which I would assume that most people are like, this guy's full of crap again. Geese can't do that crap. So he went for it. Clumsily picked up a sword, got secondhand armor, scrounged teammates, and then went to the wilderness to do gathering and slaying jobs. It was a disaster. They got slaughtered. Just like most beginner adventure parties on the Demon Continent, monsters tore them to pieces. The only reason that Geese survived was because of a dream that he had the night before it happened. In an empty space, standing on a white floor that stretched on forever, a man with a face Geese couldn't make out gave him a divine message. If this happens, he told him, here's what you should do. It was all so casual. Geese shook it off like a random dream. No way what he was describing could happen to them. But it did. His teammates' heads were ripped off their bodies and devoured, and Geese was cornered. That was when Geese did, as the mysterious man said. A dead man will take whatever help he can get. Thus, Geese survived. I'm assuming like he just gave him directions like if that happens, run three paces to the right and then jump into a hole and they won't be able to find you there or something like that. I guess it doesn't matter that much. I guess he doesn't describe it. It's not that important. From this day forth, little Geese became a disciple of the man god, and he thought life as a disciple was basically heaven. The man god taught him how to fight with a sword and magic. And while he might not have given Geese a power on par with the Demon Eye, he readily told him the future. With that, at Geese's disposal, he moved up in the world. He breezed through some serious nasty situations he'd never thought he'd work out on his own. This got him noticed by powerful guys. They became Geese's allies, and he used his knowledge of the future to help them and gain their trust. Together with them, Geese set off on thrilling adventures. He loved every minute of it. See, didn't it happen exactly like I said? Anything apart from fighting, I've got you covered. So long as Geese could go around bragging, he was happy. He felt like he was one of the best. These real powerful guys treated him like an equal, and all the nobodies around them assumed Geese was a real big shot. What else could he ask for? After his hometown got wiped out, and he joined the fangs of the Black Wolf, the man god didn't tell Geese the future much. Interesting. So basically it's implying, okay, so now he starts working for the man god after he got that near-death experience. He starts working for the man god, and he's using his knowledge of the future to help random people out, probably on the demon continent or whatever, and he's moving up. But then it says, after he lost his hometown, and he joined the fangs of the Black Wolf, he hasn't talked to the man god since then. Like, he just doesn't really visit him. He didn't tell Geese the future much, but Geese didn't pay it any mind. So that tells me that, yes, he was doing all his work there, and then it sucks that it didn't get into what happened with his hometown. It's, like, super important, but it's not getting into it. Like, it's just completely avoiding it. You know this is going to be a hot-button topic when Rudeus finally confronts Geese. He's going to be in front of face-to-face with Geese, and say, why the hell did you do it? Geese is probably going to have somebody hostage in a way that Rudeus is not just going to blow him away immediately. So he's going to be like, Geese, why'd you do it? Freaking Edis is over here, and she's fighting Gal Farion. You got over here, I don't know, Zenoba is grappling with Bodygotti or something. I'm just envisioning all these characters that are super important. Atoff is duking it out with Orsted. I don't know. Petagoose is duking it out with Atoff. It's probably going to come up at that point what happened with the village, because I think the village is going to be that's going to be the big clicking point, because it's going to probably turn to a thing that, again, either the man god wanted Geese to be faithful to him and didn't want him to be anchored down in the demon continent, or there was something really important in that village the man god wanted to get rid of, and it's probably going to come up when he's talking to Geese. There's something big there. It's just so weird they keep avoiding talking about it. We've literally gotten a little bit of insight into Geese 2 times now, and it keeps dancing around the village. Watch the village is still there. Watch the village was never taken out. It's just something that's like in his mind. But Geese didn't pay it any mind. He was having fun running after Paul anyway. He liked Paul so much. The man god still popped in a fair bit to save Geese's skin when it counted. The man god's advice was like a part of who he was. It was thanks to him that he got to be a real adventurer. Part of Geese, though, felt empty. That feeling was strongest after the fangs of the Black Wolf split up, and Geese spent a while wandering around by himself. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was a fraud, that he never achieved anything himself. If he weren't such a pushover, maybe he could have believed in himself a little bit. But the fact remained that he couldn't fight to save his life. Without his knowledge of the future, his only purpose was to tag along with stronger people and cover their weak points. His whole adventure persona was just a shell of lies and pride. He was like the that clung to a goldfish while they swam. All he had going for him was tricks and quick tongue. There wasn't anything, not one thing, he was really good at. Was he okay with living like this? When it came to it, what did he even want? Who did he want to be? Those feelings had always been lurking deep inside of him. What he told the gruff guy in front of him was simple. You probably won't understand, but in my whole life, I've never been ahead. Geese wasn't trying to talk him into anything. Right now, he was giving voice to what lay in his heart. I got on by scraps, trying to get an edge on people, lying and sweet talking, and riding around on people's coattails. I never achieved a single thing independently. Geese had never had anything he wanted. He had a dream. He wanted to go on an awesome adventure and go down in history. It wasn't so much to ask for, was it? Who actually cares about history? That was Geese's one desire, to be special. He got to go on an adventure, but he was always tagging along with teammates. He never had them follow him somewhere he wanted to go. He reckoned he knew. Deep down, he knew he was borrowing all of his power, and anything he achieved with it was hollow. At any moment, a gesture from the man god could take it all away. So Geese tried not to want anything. If he set his sights on something, he thought he'd never get it. Just relax, have fun, go with the flow of whatever life threw at him, and then everything would work out just fine. Now there's a jinx to live by. Whoo, this is all pretty much This is all seemingly pretty straightforward, but I do want to kind of point out that I do kind of find it to be pretty heavy. The idea that he's literally saying, he had these dreams. I want to be this grand adventurer, but I realize at some point I'm just tagging along with people. I'll never do anything for myself. And that goes into the whole thing with the letter itself and with Rudius. It's literally him telling him, I'm nothing without the man god. You're strong. I'm nothing. I'll never have anything. I can't even do anything by myself. He's always needed an adventure party to get anywhere. And he's saying again here, I wanted to be an adventurer. I wanted to achieve great things, but I realize I'm just borrowing power, and eventually one day the man god will take it all away. He's just giving me this stuff. I could not achieve any of this without the man god, and I know that one day, just like what happened in my hometown, one day he'll take it all away. So don't bother committing to things. Don't want. Don't dream. Don't desire. Just live. Because if you want something, because if you hope for something, because if you dream for something, you're not going to get it with your own powers. You're going to give it given to you possibly by the man god, but don't ever want it because one day it will all disappear. Just relax. Don't want. Have no dreams, no desires. Just flow. The perfect place for somebody to be in, for the man god to control him. He has nothing. In the mindset that it's portraying him being in, he is so open for manipulation, and he's so broken, weak, lacking desires. If he set his sights on something, he wouldn't get it. Just relax, have fun, go with the flow, enjoy it. And when you're just basically a brush for the man god, why would you ever push back? Now it was different. The man god came to Geese for help, an all-powerful god lowering himself down to ask Geese. He needed him. Geese wasn't trash. He was somebody who mattered. If Geese won this fight, that would prove that he was special. He'd always been on his guard around everyone, layering up lies upon lies, thinking he was useless. What if this was his chance to be strong, just like he always wanted? That's why, how should I put it? Geese wondered if his answer was what he'd want to stake his life on. Everything inside him told him he shouldn't, that all of it was crap, that he already knew what he was worth. He knew it. He knew that he was nothing special. Can't swing a sword, can't use magic. There was an odd thing that he could do better than any guy on the street, but he never mastered anything. He'd always be a jack of all trade, master of none, a monkey-faced nobody. But I can't let it end like this. That was what Geese said. Then he shut up. That's it. I can't let it end like this. I just can't end. I can't give up. That's what's so crazy. He's literally stated that he's a nobody. I can't do anything. I can never want things. I can never have things. I can never achieve things. I don't have a thing that I want. I just live. But I never let it end. He's like some people, they've given up on everything. Like they've found that end of their life that they just don't really care for anything. But they'll never cross that line. They'll never give up. It's a place I've seen several people be at. It's that place where they feel like they'll never achieve something, but they just want to at least exist. Just let me exist. I don't have a dream. I don't have a desire for something. I'll never achieve things. I've given up on success, but I'll never give up on everything else. I'll never let it end. I'll never give up. Another way this could be interpreted, depending on how this is translated, is this could technically be that Geese is waiting for something. That he possibly himself, for instance, wants to get revenge for his village. I can't end here. That was what Geese said. Then he shut up. He was surprised at how right those words sounded to himself. That's it. That's how he always felt. At this time, he thought he was having a good enough time with life, enjoying himself, and one day he'd die in a ditch, and that would be that. But deep down, he felt different.
You can't, huh?
The man took his hand off his sword. His eyes were dull now. The gleam from before was gone.
Ha! If that ain't the truth, you're exactly right.
Geese blurted out what came to mind, but thinking it over, what he said fit this guy's situation pretty perfectly. Again, somebody that is at his end is just giving up, but again, doesn't want to end it. Geese can't let it end like this, and neither could this man in front of him.
All right, I'll come be your pawn.
The man gave a savage grin, and then reached out and took Geese's still outstretched hand. It was all so quick, it felt a bit anticlimactic. But what Geese said just now had brought this guy around. This guy, the greatest swordsman in the world, so powerful, all humankind knew his name. Yeah, that picture. Yeah, that picture. I had my suspicions because Orsted, he's up at the north. He's given up his family, left everything behind. He was defeated. He wants to defeat Orsted so badly. And the picture, thanks to the anime, the guy does have a scar on his face. He does have blue hair. Nina Falion has blue hair. I don't think we've ever seen Gal Farion in the novel series, a visual of him before. The anime does have a brief shot of him when he's picking up Ghislaine in the flashback at the Duldia village. And he's got the scar. So that kind of connected there as well. It's odd that it doesn't actually say in here, but my current prediction is that it's Gal Farion. The greatest swordsman in the world, so powerful all of humankind knew his name.
So what do I do now? Do I guard you? No.
Geese forced down a smile that was creeping up. Maybe he did. Yeah, having a guy like him reaching his hand out to you. What, am I supposed to guard you now? Like, this guy's gonna protect me? It's crazy. I'd never have to worry about anything after that. Geese forced down a smile as creeping up. Maybe he didn't need to, but it was good practice to not go around smirking at people. It drives him off. Another jinx Geese had. Geese handed him a map.
For now, you're to go here. Once you get there, I'll tell you what's come next. One more thing. If we run into each other, act like you don't know me. This is all top secret.
The location of the final showdown was already set. When Geese wasn't off making invitations to guys like this, he was getting ready. He was being careful, taking his time to shore up everything. He wouldn't lose. I'm kind of assuming the final showdown's probably going to be on the Demon Continent, which really sucks because I think the only way that... I mean, if Geese gives Rudius a notice, hey, come here, it's ready, let's do this now, let's get it over with, I think Rudius will come, but there is a side of me that almost wonders if Geese is going to have to lure him with something, and that sucks because I think, again, the Demon Continent is Rudius' weakness right now. He barely knows anybody there, and Geese has been from there. So I think most of the people that Geese is going to recruit will be from the Demon Continent, and I think he's going to have to drag Rudius there, and I think it's going to be used through the Magurdian village. Because that's Rudius' biggest tie in the Demon Continent is Roxy's family and her people. Everybody else on the Demon Continent, I don't think Rudius is like, oh my gosh, I gotta go protect them. So that could end up being, it could be the Demon Continent near the Magurdian village is where they're going to draw him out to. And this is probably going to be an insane battle. If and when this does happen, it's going to be a big battle. If we already got Gal Farion here, all the people that Rudius has, I think we're at least probably going to have... That'd be cool if Rudius could get Randolph, but I wonder if Randolph is already on Geese's side, because I could see them both being very well tied together. I don't see Bodygotti getting involved unless Rudius somehow talks him into it. I can see Rudius getting rejured. Like I said, I almost want to like take the time to like write down a sheet of all the biggest characters we've revealed so far and just match them up as a big battle. It'd be kind of fun to list out. Maybe I'll do that next video if people care about it. He was being careful, taking his time to shore up everything. He wouldn't lose.
Fair enough. One thing though, I'm no actor. You don't want to get caught? You best stay out of my way.
The man started to walk away. It was like he didn't give a damn about Geese. Like Geese wasn't even there. Geese liked that. You could tell that he lived his whole life by his sword. No pointless action. No wasted words. When he decided something, he just did it. Not the easiest person to maneuver, but insanely powerful. And now, he was Geese's pawn. Geese watched the man until he faded from sight. Then, with a whoop, he punched his fist into the air. Yes! I'm alive. Wait, now I gotta get the hell out of here. That first guy was the easiest. Again, because it says right here, that first guy, that makes me believe this whole segment right here was the first person that Geese went to talk to. And that the part before this was him talking about that. Because it says right here, the first guy. So that would be the guy that everybody knows, that you would even know. He was a big enough deal to need no introduction. And sure as hell didn't act like he had the time for a nobody like Geese. But in the end, all he had to do was talk. He came around to what Geese was saying and joined him on his own accord. Timing probably had something to do with it. After all Geese's plotting and worrying, in the end, it was something he hadn't even meant as persuasion that conveniently happened to resonate with him. People will always open up about what is troubling them if someone comes to them with the perfect words. Yeah, and again, the man god knows when to pull those strings, when to push him in a certain direction. That if I push him in this direction to run into this dragon right here, he's probably going to open up really quickly. Because you'll see that he achieved something that was... The thing with Gal Farion right here is it's laying out this idea that, yes, when he was very young, he ran into this dragon. Barely survived. But he survived. And then he grew up, and he got stronger and stronger and stronger. And then he ran into Orsted, the dragon god. Orsted, the dragon god, beat him senseless. Beat the crap out of him. Lost horribly. And he made it his duty, his goal. I'm never going to lose again until I beat that Orsted. I'm not going to lose that Orsted either. And he gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And then he got beat by somebody again. But the idea here is that Right here, the man god allowed him to beat the thing that beat him before, the white dragon. To show him you lost before, but you can win this time. You lost to Orsted, but you can win next time. The man god knows how to manipulate people and push those little buttons. In the end, that's all it was. I done good, right? Some bits I got lucky, but still, I talked him around. Here's the thing, though. Oh, holy man god. Ever since talking to that guy, something sat wrong with my spirit. Maybe we've missed a trick, you know? I got this feeling somewhere along the way we're falling into a trap. Well, my god, any idea what that's about? I don't like this end. I don't like that's the end, by the way. That's the end of extra chapter. Oh my gosh, that went long. That ending is so ominous. He just talked Gal Farion into joining this swordsman. Again, if it's Gal Farion. And he says, in the end, I did good, right? Some bits I got lucky, but in the end, I talked him around to it. Here's the thing, though. Man God, ever since talking with that guy, something sat wrong within my spirit. Maybe we've missed a trick. I just get this feeling somewhere along the way we're gonna fall into a trap. The only thing I can think of what this is implying here is that Geese is kind of getting a little bit of a off feeling, which is sort of the storytelling way of flagging something. And the only thing I can think of, because Nina is a friend of Edis, which in proxy with Rudius, joined the Rue Quagmire's mercenary band, that Nina herself is going to get tipped off what her father's doing, that her father's going to mention to her what he's going to go do, that her father's going to say, I'm off to go fight Orsted. I finally got my opportunity. I'm leaving. You take over the Sanctum or something like that. And then she's like, holy crap, that's not good. He's probably not going to give it to her. There's emperors and whatnot that could take over. He's going to hand it off to somebody and leave because he's going to go off to fight Orsted. And he's going to tell Nina. And I think Nina, knowing that Rudius Edis is working for Orsted, she's going to try to stop him or go off and tell Rudius and them that it's coming. And that's the trap. That's the only thing I can think of. I don't see Gal Farion being the trap. Like he's like, haha, I tricked you all. I'm not actually working for you. I actually like Orsted. I don't know. Rudius could have gotten to them first. Yeah, that'd be curious. Maybe Nina has gotten to him. I don't think so. I think he's dead set on fighting Orsted. But again, I think that's going to tip him off, though. But still, in the end, I think what it's going to turn into is when it goes to the fight itself, either Edis or maybe Edis and Nina will be fighting Gal Farion. I mean, in the end, Orsted shouldn't be fighting. The idea here is that Geese is trying to take down Rudius, and Rudius is supposed to be fighting for Orsted. If Orsted comes in and gets involved in the fight, he's going to use some of his mana, and he's not supposed to be. Rudius is supposed to be handling all this. Orsted, again, is trying to build up his mana for when he does fight the Man God. So Orsted might not be there at all, and it will be Gal Farion probably fighting Nina and Edis. Probably Edis. Nina might not be there. But anyways, that's 21. We are done with the volume. It's another down volume. Down volume. My ranking, where do we put this in the ranking? I thought about this one a lot, surprisingly. I actually thought about this one a lot because I don't... There's a part of my brain that keeps trying to fill in some of this volume with stuff that was in 20. 20 kind of bleeds over into it a little bit. And yes, 20 had a little bit of an issue for me because I gave it a C, I think. 21 has, yes, obviously one incredibly emotional chapter. There is one extremely emotional chapter, but that doesn't make a volume. I always struggle with these volumes where there's one really, really good moment in it where everything else is not that great. Volume 21's problem is the beginning. The whole beginning portion of Millis, I think, is like probably going to be a really bad reread. I might be able to find something in it, but I think it's going to be a bad reread. Just because there's nothing really interesting in there. You already know what's going to happen. So it's just really kind of reading through all the, like, oh, who's this? Who's behind it? Who did it? Who did it? Who did it? Who did it? Is the Man God? Is the Man God? So we have them going after Geese. He faces off against Claire the first time. He goes to see the Pope, says he's going to kidnap the blessed child. And then after making that claim, he goes to try to work things out with Therese. And that leads into, yes, the Keepers of Anastasia coming after him. He fights them. Probably easily the weakest fight in the entire series. Like, I think the fight with the Keepers of Anastasia was probably the weakest fight. It just wasn't interesting. There was a cool aspect to the idea of them using Water God style with barrier shields. But other than that, it was so one-sided. It was kind of boring. And I think the other thing that kind of bugs me about that fight with the Keepers of Anastasia is that it's something that, I don't know if I brought it up before, it's something that's kind of bugged me right now with the time jumps that have been happening over the last, like, 4 volumes, that we've seen this leap from Rudius being, like, trying to get stronger to now he's just super strong. Like, we just time leap to Rudius being kind of overpowered. And it can totally, in the next volume, shove that in my face and say, nope, Rudius is, like, super weak still. But I feel like there's been, like, a super leap in Rudius's confidence and skills and OP-ness. I mean, it was like the whole situation with him saving the girls in that forest and blasting that lizard. It was like, okay, apparently Rudius is really strong now. Thanks for the time jump. It's no longer like this cool story about Rudius being super weak, just trying to scrape by. Now it's like suddenly he's super confident and just apparently has been through like 50 battles. It just super jumps forward. Anyways, that was a long tangent. We had the meeting at the church with leaders, and then Cliff's super good scene. That was a super good scene with Cliff just completely shouting everybody down. Then, yes, of course, the whole thing with what Claire was doing, Zenith slapping Rudius, the reveals about Claire, the cure, the blessed child reading Zenith's memories, which is easily like the biggest point in the series for a long time. I think that was probably the most emotional and amazing scene since probably Volume 12. Like, super good emotional stuff there. Like I said, I physically almost couldn't get through it. Geese's betrayal, again, I think because that one chapter, it was so, like, yeah, here it is. Here's our reveal. I mean, we already knew it was coming. Edis and the Blessed Child was a super good chapter. I love that. Therese and the Dustbin was fun. And this scene with Geese and Gal Farion, I almost feel like this last chapter is good, but I don't like it. I almost feel like this last chapter is okay. Because the last chapter is really... You feel like it's going to reveal things, but it's not. Yes, it's Geese's perspective, but it's so faithful to what was said in the letter, it's almost like you don't get anything extra. Other than the cementing the idea that he has given up on life, really, and dreams, and hopes, and futures, and settled on, I just don't want it to end. Which, again, is it's literally that last point. It's that last point before someone breaks, and unfortunately, doesn't want to live anymore. They're right on that ledge. I don't want to give up, but it's always one step away from I give up, which is a terrifying place for him to be as an enemy of Rudius. This is hard. I love Cliff's stand. I love Zenith's memories. I love the stuff around the Blessed Child. I love Edis and the Blessed Child, but everything else is okay. Before I got on here, I was thinking A, and I'm almost considering B. I think people get super mad if I do B because everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's going to be S because Andrew loves Zenith so much. I love it. But there was only one segment with Zenith. It's like everything else was just me stressing over Zenith's safety. It's kind of the same situation I had with that other one where, with the whole thing with Shiro, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, you're going to love this segment because Roxy's there. And I'm like, but Roxy was there for like 2 scenes. Yes, she's present, but she's not really doing anything. It's the same thing with this. It was most of this whole thing was me stressing over what's going to happen to Zenith, but then we have one great scene with Zenith. Where's the rest? What else do I have in A and B? 17's in B, 19's in A. I forget where I put 14, 15, 16. 20's in C. I'm gonna go B. I'm gonna do B. I'm gonna put B plus on here. And later on, I might bump it up to A as we look at the final volumes and in the tier list. I'm going to put B plus for now because I just can't do A. Because again, besides like a few really good scenes, like overall, this is probably going to be like the worst. Besides that last segment, like the chapter 7 and everything, besides that, I don't think I'd want to reread this. This is like probably like the most least one of read books, I think, in the entire series. I don't know. The stuff around Claire is super good too. Don't get me wrong. I'm struggling. I'm super struggling where I want to put it. I'm going to put it B plus for now because I can't sit here forever and keep dry recording with nothing on here while I'm thinking. I'm going to go for B plus now. I will likely change it later on. But again, Zenith's chapter crushed me. That chapter with Zenith's memories is S++, probably like the most emotional point of the entire series. But it doesn't carry the entire volume. I don't know, I'll probably change it to A later. Anyways, I'm gonna get off here. Stop thinking about it, Drew. Thank you guys for dropping by. I hope you enjoyed this premiere. Hey, chat. Hope you're doing well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. Everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. It means a great deal to me. Thank you guys for your kind words, supporting the channels in so many different other ways. Hitting the like button is free.
Greatly appreciate you guys' support and your support. Greatly appreciate you guys' support. Until the next time, until the next Mushoku Monday, Volume 22. Y'all take care.
He didn't get this far. On paper, he was an adequate. On paper, he was an adequate. On paper, he was an adequate. You said you were gonna lose. You said you were never gonna. You said you're gonna never. You said you weren't gonna. You want to defeat the man god. You want to defeat. He'd be stepping in the range of a man god's sword.